Welcome to the Hawks Nest live stream show. My name is, of course, Brandon Kane. You know the time, you know the place, and you know I appreciate you for watching. All the new subscribers that have been joining up here with the season kicking off, thank you for doing that. You guys, thanks for hitting that like button. And we are getting it rolling today with a little bit of discussion on some of the little nerdier points you can kind of get to at times. Specifically, we've got some recent press conferences from both Mike Macdonald and Clint Kubiak. Some of the players had some recent thoughts and recent interviews that I thought was kind of interesting. And so I kind of collect these over a little bit of time and then want to do certain shows where I'm going to kind of show these off a little bit. I want to talk about it because I think it gives us some insights into the team, not just in what's going on right now, but some of what is their intention coming into the year. How do you want to use this kind of player versus how we think they're going to use this player? How's this situation playing out versus how we think it's going to play out? So I thought Macdonald had some really good quotes, and I've got to give him a lot of credit because he at times, even Kubiak was doing this, I think, in his recent presser a little bit, where there's very much a draw for coaches to try to go to the place where they're giving you a lot of nothing. You're saying a lot, you're saying a lot, you're giving me nothing. And it's all what all show, no tell, or no tell, no show, whatever it is. But that's kind of what you typically do get with a lot of coaches, where they just don't necessary evil of the media, and I'm not giving them much. I think in Mike Macdonald's case, just being such a straightforward kind of guy in all ways, that it's kind of how he always operates, that he doesn't have as much of that built-in ability to sort of, like a politician, sort of smooth his way through the pressers in the way of kind of hiding stuff. And so little subtle things will slip out in his answers, even when he's not blatantly laying it for bare. You can kind of read into what he is meaning, what he is saying on some of this stuff, and it is what I like about him, because he'll actually give you some of these nuggets in these press conferences, and that's why I wanted to do the show today. So without further ado, let's get into a couple of clips on a little quick show here today I wanted to do in just regards to Mike Mac talking. A lot of these are going to be Macdonald's quotes, a couple of Kubiaks, just some random, varied up different things. But these are things that are sort of, to me, hot stove issues for us as Seattle Seahawks fans, and that we're wondering where these things are going to play out. And the first one that it starts out with is going to be Byron Murphy. Now, Byron Murphy is definitely getting a lot of hype up in camp. Jaron Reed can't speak highly enough of him. Mike Macdonald has spoken highly of him, of course, many times over. The key really does come down to, for many of us Hawk fans, is he going to get the opportunities, the ops, as Murphy would say. Well, let's hear a couple of just quick quotes here from both Mike Macdonald and then Murphy, and then I want to kind of react to that a little bit on both the good and not the bad, but just in that the path narrows a little bit for him to be able to have more of those opportunities at times based on a little bit of what Mike Macdonald was saying. So let's get over here to Mike's quote here first. And if you can for me, folks, did you walk on in? If you hit that like button, I would really appreciate it. You know that. So first, let's hear what Mike had to say a little bit about the usage of Byron Murphy this year and some of the intention there from the coaches and where they're going to place him. Where is he going to be lined up and whatnot?
Well, I mean, he's playing D tackle, so he's going to be within it's going to be the B basically. Probably wouldn't move him outside, over the tackle at this point. Not saying he couldn't do it, but that's probably where he's going to live. It just depends on who's in the game. Is he playing with Jay Reed? Is he playing with Leo? Kind of how that works.
Okay, so that's a really quick answer, I know, but there's actually a lot kind of packaged in there just a little bit. So where he's going to play is going to be based upon whether he's playing with Jaron Reed or Leonard Williams. I think that there's some insight there that he's given you to where he is going to be playing now 3-tech, I think, when Jaron's out there. Otherwise, he would say he's playing the nose tackle role, whether it's Jaron or Leonard Williams being out there, because in the same press conference, Macdonald acknowledges that Jaron Reed last year was playing the 3-tech position. That's where they had him aligned out. And so I think that there's a little bit of an indicator in this answer, even as quick and as fast as it was, that there is going to be the intention here when Jaron Reed's out on the field, that's when Byron Murphy will slide to the 3-tech. And this is the easiest answer to getting Byron Murphy to the 3-tech position. It's not as much of having to have a Peely come forward or Bahana or Hankins suddenly has some career regeneration here at age 34 years old. It's more that Jaron Reed can slide back to his typical 1-tech role and handle what he did back in college at Alabama. And again, Mike in the same press conference did reference a little bit of the fact that he had been surprised, and kind of the more he learned about Jaron Reed, the fact that Reed had that background in him of playing that nose tackle position. And so there is an indicator in that answer that you are going to get some of Byron Murphy into that 3-tech role when he's on the field with Jaron Reed. I think that he's also saying when Leonard Williams is out there, you're not really going to be playing Leonard Williams in a nose tackle role. Leonard can do that here and there, but Leonard at his best will be a 3 tech. The other part of this that kind of, like I say, narrows the path a little bit here for Byron Murphy on the usage is he's asked about if they're going to use him on the edge. And this is a way that when you have a guy that's a kind of sub 6 foot type of dude that's really quick and really fast for the defensive tackle position, you can at times kick them out to the edge. The Rams did this with Aaron Donald, especially as career wore down. More and more snaps came with him off the edge, and you could loop him around on stunts and just create problems for offensive lines when you would do that. It doesn't sound like that's really going to be as much the intention here from Seattle, partly probably because you feel good about the edges that you do have. You have a hard enough time getting the snaps for those 4 guys that you're rolling out there as it is, but that does then narrow down the path, right? So if Leonard Williams is on the field a high amount of the time and Jaron Reed ends up eating some of those 3 tech snaps, there's only so many 3 tech snaps to be had there, and there will be a little bit of a draw back into the nose tackle position at times. So are we going to get more of Byron Murphy rushing the passer? I think so. Let's see what the man himself said when asked this question directly on 710.
But I also feel like I could have did even better. But just being a rookie, I feel like last year I was just playing off instinct because the game was so fast. But like now, coming into it now, it's like the game has slowed all the way down. So that helps me a lot. Now I'm able to see everything, read formation. I'm knowing where the ball going now. So and I also just know my ops, like when to take them or not. So I'm just pumped for the season. I'm ready to go.
Coach Carroll used to say all the time, and I think it's an absolute undeniable fact, that rookies are going to take the biggest step of their career into year 2. And I think defensive linemen, this is especially the case. And looking at a lot of research off the defensive ends, and we're charting guys like Derek Hall and Boye Maffe's first year, and we're trying to understand, well, if they don't necessarily pop that first year, do we have a recent history of guys who actually are able to develop and get better over time? And then it's not an indicator that the guy's not necessarily going to light the world on fire eventually. Just sometimes guys come out the box flying, and sometimes it just takes a little bit of time, especially for a position that requires a little bit of that extra nuance and understanding, like Byron says, that game's playing so fast. But the intention seems to be that he's going to get more opportunities, ops, as he said. He is going to get slid over there. I still think, though, if you're looking at this going, well, are we going to get Byron Murphy at 80% of the snaps out of like a 3 tech / kind of another defined role outside of the nose tackle position? I would argue to say that that's probably not going to be quite the case. You might get him at like 60% this year. You might get him up even around 70%. But I still think you're getting a healthy amount of even up to about a third of his snaps where he is going to be operating off of the nose tackle. And for me, some of this is just because they're not going to be open on putting him out on the edge at times, which could be a little bit of a solution to this, where Wenner's going to get some of those snaps, Jaron's going to get some of those snaps. You find some nose tackle somewhere, and then you're able to use them a little bit out there. But like Mike said, that's not going to be their intention on the way that they're going to roll with that. Another player that we're kind of watching for to try to understand how they're going to use is going to be Nick Emmanwori. And this was another, I think, good quote from Macdonald where he provided some clarity on what their approach is going to be with Nick Emmanwori. Because you come into the season and he is in a lot of different meeting rooms and he's doing a lot of different things. But are you going to try to solidify him into a role? Or are you going to try to move him to different positions throughout the course of the game? And Mike seemed to indicate a little bit more that this is going to be a little more sliding into safety, though he does give a little bit of an indication at the end of his answer on this one that there's a door open on this one to it potentially being a little bit more, and especially when you consider some of their usage this year.
I think it's easiest to put him. He's in the DB room, and he is a safety. I mean, he's going to rep it, in base personnel at safety when there's not a nickel on the field. And you could see him in some other spots too, as we move forward. But I think it's easiest to kind of work from back to front, and then when you're at the second level, it's kind of like being a down safety to a certain extent. And so there's a lot of crossover teaching.
We're getting double sound. I'm sorry about that. Why are we getting double sound? Is the noise a problem? Or echo? Echo's bad, huh? Okay, let's try to see if there's no echo on this. My bad about that, folks. Let's try to replay it, guys. Let me know if this one's better this way.
I think it's easiest to put him. I mean, he's in the DB room, and he is a safety. I mean, he's gonna rep it. In base personnel at safety when there's not a nickel on the field, and you could see him in some other spots too, as we move forward. But I think it's easiest to kind of work from back to front, And then when you're at the second level, it's kind of like being a down safety to a certain extent. And so there's a lot of like crossover teaching.
Sorry about that, folks. Oh, my bad, guys. Sorry. Sometimes it's live show. Weird things will tend to happen. I think I figured out what was going on with it. My player was playing in the background. So Nick Emmanwori, safety cornerback room is where he's going to be put in and aligned at this point on this. And so I think that there's a little bit of a wonder here with the Tyrese Knight injury if you're not going to try to kick him over into the will linebacker if Tyrese Knight's going to be out for a couple weeks. Some people are really worried about this knee injury. I think if it's a worst case scenario, it's a meniscus or it's an MCL. It's probably not the ACL, the dreaded one, which would then probably mean that it's going to be, it's a 4 to 6 weeker at times. And so would you have Emmanwori fill in at will linebacker? That's kind of the great unknown on this a little bit. But I do think that there's going to be a firmer footing on this versus trying to have him doing linebacker stuff is more often than not. I think the ideal here, based on what he's saying, is we get him in the safety, and then we get him down maybe at times into that slot role. Like he said, he's in the defensive back room. So you get him down at times more into that kind of slot role. And he's going to just operate, I think, between those two, though there's a variety of different ways that, you can operate from within that. And sometimes even when he's coming down the box, like he said, sometimes you're using safety, indicators, not linebacker indicators, even though you're kind of in a linebacker position, you're just playing it like a down safety or like a box safety at times and how you're going to go. So it's a little bit semantics on this one as to, whether or not he'll be at a linebacker at times or not. But as they're treating him, it sounds like at least down the line on this one, it's going to be one where he's going to be just as much into the safety position as much as possible, / a little bit of that slot role, I think, and how they're going to carve this out for him. And they've been doing a lot of slot with him in the preseason where it does seem like Devin's going to kick out to the outside just a little bit more. Thank you for bearing with me on the issues there with the audio. That's my bad. I thought I had it all set up, but I got a little messed up there on that one. All right. So next up, I wanted to cover a little bit of this one with the offensive line. And this is, I think, a very important question. I'm glad that they asked it here at the press conference. And that being that, are you going to rotate your offensive line like last year? Anybody following the channel knows I hate this stuff where you go into a game and you say, okay, Bradford's going to be our right guard for the first quarter, and then Haynes will be our guard for the second quarter, and then Bradford will be our guard for the third quarter, and then whoever was the best guard will let him play in the fourth quarter. It sounds really good on paper, competition, and they're driving on this right now. But in actuality and how it really always plays out, it's not quite always works as well. And luckily, Mike gave a good answer on this one to give us an indicator that's not going to go this way.
At center and right guard, obviously injury situations aside, is there any way that if like a winner doesn't really declare himself, obviously, that you would go into the season and rotate again like you did last year?
Right now, the plan is not to rotate. I think we're narrowing in on what we want to do. We have a process, so right now we just want to stick to it. But we'll name a starting five at some point.
So you're hopefully not going to get the rotations, but at the same point in time, they're still not in a real heavy rush here to solidify down on the first string. And Kubiak talked about in his press conference, acknowledging the fact that you want to get this offensive line, like I've talked about, settled down as early as possible so that you can take advantage of the cohesion factor, where I know what my guy's doing to my right, I know what my guy's doing to my left. I don't have to think about it or wonder if there's an adjustment. It's made like that, and we're instantaneously on the same page. And so you don't get that if you're rotating guys through all the time. You don't get that if you can't settle on an offensive line. And I understand competition will drive a lot of this from a coach's perspective, but it has been a little bit of the problematic aspect of the offensive line in the past is that you've had to take so long down the river before you finally decide that you're going to get on the boat, and here's our boat, and we're going to ride this out this way. So at least they're not going to rotate, but we're still in a place that I don't think speaks to necessarily this offensive line being in a place of solidity at this point. Kubiak and his new scheme is great. I think Benton is bringing these players forward. We're going to get improvement on the offensive line. But I think that there's still the fact that we're 3 weeks into camp and they're still not quite sure here and not quite sure there. There's less kind of chaos here because you know your left tackle, you know your right tackle, you know seemingly now your left guard. So we're starting to narrow this thing down just a little bit. We do still find ourselves with two positions here that do still remain in a bit of flux, and we're not going to get necessarily an answer on that anytime soon. Kubiak and Mac had some interesting comments on Anthony Bradford that I wanted to cover as well on this that I thought were very interesting as well, where, again, I think there's some true insight here from Mike Macdonald and both Kubiak on this when they talk about Anthony Bradford. So I'm going to play both these clips kind of back to back and kind of see where you guys are on with this a little bit, if you're getting the same feel that I was.
Well, I think he's taking control of his career. I think it's his mentality that it's up to him. Nobody else can want it for him. We obviously know that he has the talent to be a great player in this league, and he's shown it in practice consistently. He has game reps where he's shown it. We all know it's a matter of consistency, and that's the challenge for him to finish this start that he's put together. And we're about halfway through training camp. Let's go close the thing out the right way.
Be plain spoken, be straightforward, hit people right between the eyes with things. It feels like that's what he's kind of doing here with what he's talking about, because he's not really kind of hiding it through. I get the impression with Bradford that the guy's got all the ability in the world. That it comes down to, he needed to get down the technique and get that refined better. That's come now, I think, with a Ben and helping him with some of that stuff. Now it comes down to the want, the will. How connected to the process can you be playing and play out? Can you drive to want to be that really good player in this league? Or are you okay with just kind of mainly getting by and just being here? I'm just happy to be here kind of thing. And I think that the coaches both, you'll hear from Kubiak's quote too, I think are both kind of indicating this on their perspective of it. It's like, now's the time, now's the place. You got this ready to rip. You got this ready to roll. Let's go. Here's Kubiak's discussion on it too, which I think just kind of echoes some of Mike Mac's thoughts on this.
AB has made great strides. Obviously he's a physical presence, but you see more consistency in his game throughout camp. So I see a guy that's playing more confident.
So with Anthony Bradford, this guy's got the ability to do this. And I know he's sliding right now a little bit in the right guard spot because it doesn't seem like there's a lot pushing behind him a little bit on this. But we can't forget that the ability is there. And is he a guy that's going to have some limitations to his game even when he reaches the best of his upside? Yeah, probably. Probably there's always going to be a little bit of those moments where you're going to get whiffs in pass protection. A little bit where he's just a little slow out of his stance on a given moment. Can be mitigated a little bit by the fact you're playing right guard. Can be mitigated if Zable can be more solid over there at left guard. You can trust him one-on-one, and now you can slide more of that center help over to Bradford at times and allow it to roll in that fashion. So this is all a little bit of, it doesn't have to be that we can't still have this position be at least pretty decent and to strong at times. Even if there's a little bit of fluctuation with Bradford that you're just going to inherently get. The kid's got the talent, he's got the ability, and I think the coaches are really hoping that this is where finally that light fully comes on and he's ready to roll because his opportunity is here and now. This is where you should be kind of clicking in. And one thing that has been mentioned many times, but is worth mentioning, is that you have in Christian Haynes and Bradford two guys that are basically the same age. But in Bradford, you have a guy that's had the opportunity to be 3 years as a pro here to kind of learn this stuff through all the way. And so maybe he gets kind of the benefit of that now. Or the greater benefit you get on this roster is we have a lot of young guys who we've been going through their early process of their development, that we've had to kind of suffer the slings and arrows of the process and what it takes for them to get to where we hope they can go. And then now maybe we're going to get some of the fruits and the benefits of that. Be it even guys from Bradford to Lucas to Cross to Woolen to, your Tyrese Knights if the knee injury is okay on that side, but a variety of other guys. Byron Murphy, Derek Hall, Boye Mafe, all these guys that are had now a couple years in the league. They've had some time now in the weight room, had some time now to kind of learn and master things, or as Byron Murphy said, for things to slow down a bit, as you start to get a little bit longer into the sport, but you're also still kind of in your physical prime. Kubiak's talked a lot about relationship with Mike Macdonald, and I really love how these guys' relationship has come together in the feel that you get for what they're doing. You sometimes have a defensive coach and offensive coach on a team, and maybe they don't get along, and maybe they just kind of stay separate in what they do, and you stay in your lane and I stay in my lane, and we don't really intersect. I got to be honest with you, when I look at Grubb last year, I got a lot of that impression between him and Mike Macdonald. A big part of the Grubb going wrong had to do, I think, with the lack of communication those guys had with being on the same page and understanding that what we're trying to do and how we're trying to accomplish it and how we need to get there to accomplish it. But what you get with Kubiak and Mike, they're already talking about a lot of how these guys are really interworking and really discussing the background. Why did you do this? Why did you do that? And they're trying to make each other better. Make each other better. I saw you do this with that. Why would you go this? I went with this. Oh, that's why you do that. Oh, this thing gives them our defense problems on this. So listen to Kubiak just kind of talk a little bit about his relationship with Mike Macdonald. And then on the second clip, I'm going to play you just him discussing Mike Macdonald as a coach and his approach and how that approach has resonated here with the players.
Speak every day. He spends a lot of time with our offensive staff. specifically situationally, and the way he prepares us for situations is as good as I've ever been around. He's talking to us about things that give them trouble on defense, give suggestions that way, and overall, we're just feeding off his message of physicality.
You want your coach in your offensive play caller's ear, not in the way where you want him telling him, hey, outside zone on this, inside zone on this. But you do want him connected to the defensive process, for instance, like we're down getting into field goal range. You're gonna have a third down here. I'm not gonna give you a fourth down because I think my defense is gonna hold it up today. So if you give me that 3 points, that's all I need. Versus, man, my defense is we're struggling against this offense today, Coobs. I'm going to give you 2 downs. You're going to have a third, fourth down to get this thing. We want to get this in the end zone. Field goal's not going to be good enough. I don't know if my defense can hold it. I want to lock this in other ways. That's just a small little thing, but there's a variety of different ways that can come about for a coach talking then to his coordinator and on that management of the game and guiding this thing in the right place, that we're kind of connected to our process. Last year, you had a moment where I think they had a lead and they were in a position to kind of drain the clock down, and instead you had Grubb come down on the other side of, I think, the infield goal range already. I think he threw like 3 straight times. And it's one of those moments where as a coach, you want to have the connection back to your offense coordinator, go like, look, we both understand those moments there. Take that clock down, get yourself in a position. And I think you took a sack because you passed at one point. You took yourself out of field goal range. It was a really bad sequence. And I don't think that you're going to see that again replicated again this year with Kubiak there, because these guys are really on the same page for how they're trying to win football games, and then how you get to winning football games, connecting this offense to this defense, to the special teams, and how it all kind of is the great circle a little bit on this. Also, he had a little bit of discussion on Mike Macdonald as a coach, and I love this quote.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out thus far is the expectations are very clear and the practices are extremely physical. We come out here for 2+ hours and our guys are going hard, and you don't hear any complaining about how hard practice is, because that's the expectation. And guys know that going into practice and they embrace it, and that comes from the head coach.
One of the places that wasn't given enough credit to Mike Macdonald that is a great boon for him that he pulled off, and he's referenced multiple times over in press conferences here in training camp, is the fact that you had full attendance in OTAs. You got everybody out there, everybody. And that's very hard to do in this modern era, to get that full kind of participation out there on the field from everybody when it is voluntary. When guys are getting there very few times, they get some time away from the game and sport, but you brought them in because you've gotten this locker room and the veterans in this locker room to buy in the fact that we can be great, but it's going to take this. We can get to this spot, but you ain't going to get there just tacitly hoping you get there. You've got to drive to make it happen. You've got to get everybody on this roster on that same page to get to that spot. Another representation of this is just what Kubiak had talked about, being that he has these guys out practicing hard and not complaining and not bitching and moaning and not, man, it's so hot, man, why are we got to go like this, but understanding what they're doing and why they're doing that. Why we're practicing so hard, to better prepare us for the regular season, to prepare us for game 1 of the regular season, to hit the ground running, and also have that callus built up to where we can be a hard team. We can be strong. We can be rugged. We're going to be built to last throughout this NFL season because we're putting this work in now. And I know that just seems like, yeah, that's the way it should be with every NFL roster, with every NFL team and how they go about their business. They're multimillionaires. Why wouldn't they just think of that naturally in that way? But they don't operate that way, unfortunately. A lot of teams, a lot of players out there are doing just the bare minimum, are just kind of getting by. And this is the very small separator in this any given Sunday NFL, where any team can beat any other NFL team. This is that small separator that is the difference between those great teams to the teams that are not. I've said that if you want to go from that team that's a good team, scratching on the surface of being a playoff contending team, to being a true elite team, you have to have the leadership in the locker room, and you have to have the full buy-in. And this is how you feel that full buy-in. You feel it in OTAs. You feel it in the intensity of these practices, and that these players understand the work they're putting in and why it's so important and why they're going to feel the benefits of that later down the line. Straightforward things that you'd think would be just a no-brainer for players, but coaches have to get this across to them. They have to find a way for that messaging to resonate. And the fact that you have a first-time head coach already getting that message resonating with these players this fast, again, just speaks back to how good a coach Mike Macdonald is and how much the future is bright for what he's going to bring here to Seattle, because he's got a real good handle on this stuff already right out the chute. We got another quote here from Kubiak just talking about Sam Darnold. I think that he's definitely a guy that you can feel is bought in on Sam. There's no quarterback controversy here. We've got our guys solidly set, and I think Sam is going to be due to have a good year here.
Sam has done a phenomenal job, and we're adjusting to him. We want to play off his strengths. He's played a lot of football in the NFL. He's been accurate throughout camp, been a great leader, and as a coaching staff, we want to do what he does best.
I think they got the guy that they thought they were going to get. Both Mike Macdonald and Kubiak, based on how they've talked about him, have gotten the guy that they thought they were going to get. It's not a superstar quarterback. It's not, you've unearthed something that nobody figured out and you figured it out and here we go. But you're going to get a smart, capable quarterback who's a really pure fit to this system. Of all the systems in the NFL that roll and work, this one probably fits to Sam Darnold the best. Rhythm passer, playing on time, mitigating at times. Maybe sometimes the processing thing can go awry here and there, though he's not a bad processor. It's just that's, there's some things that can go dark about with Sam at times, or as Bach said, I think earlier today, watch the footwork. When the footwork goes a little wonky, it get a little bit weird with that. So 1 second here. Close things up there. So definitely they are in on Sam Darnold. There is no, if you're wondering a little bit about some open quarterback competition coming into this training camp, or the 3 weeks through, Kubiak's a little bit unsure on this one, or, it's still kind of open. We're still watching it. I think Sam's firmly rooted at this point in being the man, and that he is locked in and loaded in this way. Kubiak also talked a little bit about Jalen Milroe's development, and he was asked a little bit about whether Jalen was going to be used in a way of, we're going to have them all over the place, and we're going to run our kitschy packages for him, and RPO stuff here and RPO stuff there, and we're going to get him used to playing within these packages this year. Or are they going to develop him like a normal quarterback? Are you just going to treat him like a guy you're just trying to kind of process through and develop throughout the course of the season, and then you get those packages kind of inserted in as you do?
We
get this stupid thing right here.
We're really giving him a lot of the same style of plays that our 1s and 2s are getting.
Wow. Okay. I don't know what just happened here, but let me get my thing right. We're having some technical difficulties today. Okay.
We're really giving him a lot of the same style of plays that our 1s and 2s are getting. We want to train him like we train our other quarterbacks. There will be other skill sets we can use, but we want to make sure that we're training him like we're training Drew and Sam.
So Milroe's going to be used and developed like a normal quarterback. They'll have those packages set in, but we're not going to try to guide this guy into a specialized lane where you're going to put guardrails up, and you're not going to have him continuing the process of development. You can do both things at once, where you can have those packages you bring out, but those packages are being brought out over the kind of the context of being still developed like a normal quarterback within the system. And that part's very much the key, because this sort of 2-year trek to get Milroe right is going to take him locked in learning in that fashion, not learning to just some specialized packages that he can run and try to master, but he's trying to master everything. It's going to take time. And I love that hear that this is their approach to it, and everything they've said with Milroe has been all of the right answers as far as I'm concerned. With this guy requires this, that, and this for him to eventually get to this place of things. That means the coaching staff has to buy in on all of those 3 things, or all those multitude of things, and they are based on what they're saying. We're going to give him the time. We're going to develop him correctly, and then we're developing as a quarterback. We're not trying to just use him as this sort of cool gun that we can take off the bench, and he can only fire this kind of bullet. We want him to fire all different kinds of bullets. We want to be able to do all the different things. And so this is going to help both for, I think, the short term and the long term, especially with Milroe, and that they're just doing this right in their development. They're taking their time with him. He's firmly rooted. Here's your 3rd quarterback right now. This is the pathway and approach you had to take to get him to the right spot. And again, much like I echo to some of the other prior points, that this may seem like a straightforward thing to do, that this is what you would do with a quarterback like this. Oh yeah, it's no duh. This is the approach to make. There are a lot of teams that get their quarterback position wrong with this, and they don't get this. Look at Anthony Richardson. I'm on record as saying Anthony Richardson needed 2 years. He needed 2 years to sit on the bench, to learn, to develop, not be out there in the fire with you running read option constantly with him, right? Because the Colts basically bring Shane Steichen in there, and he tosses half of his playbook out so he can bring in all these RPO option stuff for Anthony Richardson. Anthony's now just playing into that guardrail kind of situation. He's not really learning the sport, not learning to read defenses. And now he's calling a protection in a game where he slides protection left because he's anticipating a slot blitz that's not coming to leave a free rusher on the backside, so he gets his pinky destroyed. That's why this might seem like this is just what teams do. This is just, everybody does it this way. No, they don't. Teams can be really dumb about this, and teams can be blatantly stupid about this because they're driven to need to win today because they're worried about their jobs. They don't want to get fired. This Richardson thing doesn't work out. We're going to get fired. We just got to make it work. Just get him out there. Just throw him out there. See if we can get something from him. Seahawks aren't doing that here with Milroe. It's a completely different process from the one you're seeing with the Colts. It's driven so much more smartly, and these coaches absolutely get it. They get it, both Kubiak and Macdonald. And if you want a lot more confidence for this kid 2 years down the line to be able to reach that high upside that he does possess, they're going down the right road to get there. It's very encouraging to see how they have gone down this trek with Milroe. Another guy Kubiak was speaking very highly of, much like Sam Darnold, was Gray Zable. And boy, you can just feel the coach beam when he's asked about Gray Zable and his impact here on this team.
You see, as a rookie, he's ready for the moment. It's not too big for him. He belongs out there. He's got a long way to go, but I love the mentality, love the makeup, and I think that's John Snyder drafting a guy with a big heart that loves to work, and that comes from his work habits, and it comes from his mom and dad, the way he's raised.
Gray has been so steady and solid coming in here in that he has been able to hit this ground running and take this job and firmly suit it up. I mean, we've got the center in the right guard position we're a little bit still on edge about, but you just feel like you're much calmer at left guard than you've been in so many different years. And he came in there with a really nice performance. Week 1 was one of your highest rated guys out there by PFF. The coaching staff, much like I said with Sam, you hope you're going to get this guy, but the coaches have really confirmed in how they've talked about him, by how they've just set him out there at left guard right from the jump. There's no moving him into center. He's right there at left guard. They feel great about him there. But you can feel in Kubiak that he just loves this player and what he brings to that offensive line. And it's just one less thing that we have to deal with on that line is it slowly, hopefully now comes together and actually becomes if not a high-performing unit, at least an average-performing unit. That would be a godsend in itself. Last little quote on Kubiak here, and then I got a couple player quotes I wanted to play for you. Kubiak was asked about whether or not he's going to be calling the plays from the sideline or up in the booth. And I think this is kind of just a little important thing because so many of you guys talked with me last year about lamenting the fact that Grubb would just be up in the booth all the time and they need to be down the sideline. You need to get more of the feel for the players down there. So hear Kubiak talk about where he's going to be.
That's my plan, but I've done both and always reserve the right to go upstairs if need be.
Just what do you like about calling it from the sideline?
I just like being around the guys and feeling their energy and feeling substitution patterns and overall being to look a guy in the eye and make adjustments. That goes a long way.
So this is a kind of a backing up to what a lot of you guys were talking to me about, being that it's probably in general terms better for the offensive coordinator to be down on the field. As he said, he reserves the right if you really need to see it from the over-the-top side of it, but you'd ideally like to have somebody up in the booth who can give you the view of that secondary. So you don't need to see with your eyes, but you have a guy that you can trust who's looking at it and seeing the same way you do so that you can be down the sidelines to get that feel for those players. Look them in the eye, hear the conversations coming off the sideline about this or this, and be able to react to it instantaneously at that point versus trying to be up there on the headset. We all remember the DK Metcalf moment last year where DK has to rip the headset away from one of the coaches and be like, can we please throw past the effing stick scrub? And it's like that point of frustration, I think, partly comes about because you have your offensive coordinator up in that booth, not down there connecting with the players on the sideline, not down there reacting quickly to what's going on. And so another place where just to me, kind of Kubiak just kind of gets it in general terms on this. And I think it's going to be a better run offense with him down there on the sideline this year, especially with how reactive it can be. You love to be able to have a coordinator come right over the players and, okay, you're seeing this thing. Okay, you're seeing that to that. Yeah, I'm seeing this. And then you can have the discussion between the players and you towards a play or towards an adjustment on a situation within a play. And then, fix it really quickly like that versus, well, we'll get around to it at halftime when I can meet down them in the locker room and we can talk at that point. So we'll get down to it at halftime. No, right now, let's get this fixed up and harnessed and resolved. A couple other little quick quotes here. I want to go to just 3 quick ones in addition to that. We'll do a little bit of discussion in the chat with you guys today. And that's Kobe Bryant also had himself an interview, and he had a couple of little points that he brought out that I thought were also interesting on this. First, talking a little bit about the relationship with Devin Witherspoon. And I spoke a few moments ago about the fact you have all of these young players. You draft sometimes 3 years ago when you kind of started to go through this great kind of quasi rebuild, I guess. And you drafted all these guys 3 years ago. Another draft with a lot more, 2 years ago that was also heavily built up. A lot of guys drafted early in that draft. A lot of guys even drafted in some of the middle rounds you feel good about. So you have this collection, this young talent that's had its time to grow now and get seasoned as far as the actual playing experience. But the other added benefit of this is that you start to get some of the chemistry involved here. That cohesion and continuity that I'm talking about, I'm wanting to see on our offensive line. We do have that in other places, and specifically a defense that's returning all 11 starters, 15 guys that started NFL games last year, all coming back. And then the benefit you get of that is a little bit of what Kobe Bryant talks about here when he's talking about his relationship with Devin Witherspoon.
And also hear Devin Witherspoon being Devin Witherspoon. Sure. I just want to ask you more about that. Yeah. I mean, it seems like he just never stops going. Is he like that behind the scenes in the meeting rooms as well?
Yeah, absolutely. Me and him laugh every day. Honestly, our relationship has grew like a lot. That's my guy. Like, me and him talk every day. We laugh. We actually have similarities as well too. There's been times in the game where we're on the same page automatically. Just us looking at each other. We already know what we're thinking. And
you rep things out. Boom, boom, boom. Day after day. OTAs, training camp, preseason, regular season games, practice in between all the way through, repping it out. Boom, 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 boom. You have multiple years go on doing all that with some of the same players around you. And the benefit that you start to get on that, as Kobe said, I can see Devin in the slot. The offense goes to this. He looks at me. We share a look. We both know instantaneously what we're going to do. Can't ever underrate that type of aspect, especially playing in a place like Lumen Field at times. And this is something I think the Legion of Boom was able to do as well. Being that there's times when that stadium's going to rock and get loud, when you're kicking butt and taking names, that you can't do a lot of communicating out there defensively, even as you're trying to end a defense with a lot of heavy adjustments. But having that benefit, be able to look over a guy and be like, and you give a little nod and he knows what that nod means, and you're locked right on the page and you've just made an active adjustment on the play. So what that offense has done just gives you that much more ability to be amoeba, defensively speaking, but it allows you to, again, really go and move fast in the changes in what you do. And that's what the NFL is about now with these offenses and their pre-snap motions and pre-snap alignments. Can you adjust back really quick prior to the snap defensively if you see something and you know you're seeing it? And in this, with Kobe and Spoon, Kobe being here now a couple of years and Spoon now being a couple of years and playing together in that way, all those reps together, not just them, but the Reek Woolens and the Julian Loves in addition to this on the back end. Don't underrate that side of it. Don't underrate what that's going to be able to bring for Mike Macdonald to be able to really unleash this scheme in a real devastating fashion, because he can really get into the depths of the playbook. He can really trust these players to be able to be on that same page at all times. But a cool thing too, just cool that Kobe and Spoon are developing in that way. And I think we'll feel the benefits of that this year, especially with Kobe now seeing Devin maybe play even a little bit more on the outside, where there is a lot more interconnectability there to the safety and the outside corner at times and how they have to play it. Cover two, you have the corner sort of trailing underneath, and you can have the safety over the top at times. You're going to run a lot of cover two at times with that. So maybe we get even more of the benefit of that with Kobe there and Devin out on the outside. Kobe also talked a little bit of his transition to safety, and I thought this was a little interesting note because it kind of confirmed what I thought was probably in Kobe Bryant's heart when he was being moved out there to the safety position. But to his credit, I think he describes this well. And also has a key little point at the end. So we got to give props to a former Seahawks player who helped him in being willing to make this transition.
Yeah, so I obviously got drafted playing corner. So me and Tariq were playing corner at the time. And then Coach Pete would just tell me that he wanted me to, learn nickel. And it's so crazy, like during like the combine interviews and everything, they would ask me like, have I ever played nickel or things like that? And I'm just like, no, I never played it. So it was kind of like they were just preparing me mentally to I could potentially play nickel when I get to the NFL. So that's just how it was. And then that conversation to, we might be moving you to safety. I was kind of frustrated because I'm like, I just can't find a position for me right now. They couldn't find a position for me. But once I, had conversations with my older brother and guys like Quandre Diggs, it kind of like, took at ease that, I could play safety. So
big shout out to Quandre Diggs in guiding a young man in the right direction on his path. In Kobe's case, this is a fourth-round kid. Was a great pedigree coming out of college as an outside corner, two-time ACC, all-ACC cornerback, Walter Thorpe Award winner as the best college cornerback the final year he came out, and that's playing opposite Sauce Gardner. So he was well accoladed as a player coming out, a guy who could have had a big claim to fame to saying, no, I want to play outside corner. That's what I was. This is my brother. You're basically sabotaging my career. You're going to put me over to slot one year, and you're going to put me back over to safety another year. Like, why? How am I supposed to have success on this? What am I supposed to do on this? I got to learn one thing after another. I got to start back to zero again at the safety position thing. And then you have a vet in a guy like Quandre Diggs, who he himself had to take a little bit of that circuitous, I can't say the word. You guys know the word I'm trying to say, I'm sure. But he had to take a tough route himself to get himself to the safety position where, comes in the league as more of now kind of a slot and gets moved at times to strong safety, and then eventually finds his true home there, his true calling at free safety when he did, and eventually came over, of course, to our Seahawks. But I think he kind of recognized in Kobe that he was going to have to kind of take that same path, and the guiding hand of a vet in the locker room. Can't underrate the fact that when you have so many good voices in the locker room, so many leaders in the locker room, that it's not only about them guiding guys on the field, it's them guiding guys off the field and helping them out and getting them on that right path. So big shout out to Quandre Diggs for helping this young man out, because it could have looked probably pretty dark for Kobe when he's making that third positional change in his third professional season. I think all of us would get a little bit nervous on that, but having a guy in Quandre who's been through it and said, no, they're taking you down the right path. This is what you want to do. You're going to eventually get rewarded for going to this spot. It's the right position for you. And it has turned out to be that for Kobe, as the best version of him has been him at the safety position, at least as a pro. But let's also face it, we didn't get a lot of view of him at outside corner either. So I'll take the coach's expertise on this one to the bank, though. If they don't have him out outside corner, two different coaching staffs, it probably means his best position is not outside corner. One other little clip I want to play for you guys on this, and this is kind of, again, just some of this are random a little bit. This is one more Murphy quote that I pulled aside, and he's asked a little bit about having to defend the outside zone. And there's just a couple of little points in this that I wanted to talk about in regards to the outside zone that he brings up.
This rushing scheme, there's the outside zone. I realize they're doing more than just not every run play is outside zone, but as a defensive lineman, when they are hammering that and you're having to cover a lot of ground over the course of a game, does that have kind of playing that kind of run game, does that have kind of a tiring out effect, or can it have a tiring out effect on defensive linemen?
It can, because, they got you running sideways all game, but I feel like just ripping it at practice every day, because our team do run a lot of outside zone. I feel like they'll help, especially against like teams like Sans Fran's, guys who do outside zone on the line who perfect it to a T. So I feel like just ripping it with these guys each and every day, I feel like going into the game it'll be nothing.
Outside zone forces defensive tackles to think where they want to be reactive. I want to get upfield, or I want to control my block. Now instead you're asking me to have to get lateral and move that way and then read the play laterally as I'm trying to keep this offensive lineman off me, as I'm trying to control the guy who's trying to control me with his block. And so it is one where it's not just a thing where you're told to do a job like you would, like I say, if you're just sort of one teching or two gapping, or one gapping or two gapping, not one teching or two, but one gapping or two gapping. That's very straightforward for a defensive lineman and what you're telling them to do. And get upfield or hold your ground. But if I've got to go sideways and you're telling me to get upfield or hold my ground, it gets a little bit tougher on what to discern. When should I shoot? When should I go too far? A lot of outside zone is sort of preying upon defensive linemen that get stretched out too far, that lose their gap integrity. And maybe they're trying to shoot a gap too much. Maybe they got too down on trying to two gap and hold their line. They didn't get far enough laterally out to the edge to meet the running back. And so it's a very challenging system to play, in that it really makes you have to be on your P's and Q's for your indicators and how to watch the play throughout and be active with it. And Byron's talking a little bit about how repping this out in practice, especially knowing you're going to go against teams that do utilize this system quite a bit, being the San Francisco 49ers and the Rams, especially within your own division, that this is going to make it easier for you to be able to deal with these kind of plays and be able to understand how to play it better and play it righter. I think the other thing he talks about is how that moving laterally play after play can wear a defense down. We know running the ball does that in general already. You run the ball, you stay committed to running the ball, you're going to get defenses tired over the course of the game if you can do it over the course of the game, especially into kind of the depths of the third quarter. So that's even more made kind of an issue if you've got them running outside zone so often, where post-snap you're making these defensive linemen constantly run out to an edge, fight off a block and constantly run out to an edge. Eventually get those guys kind of wore down over the course of the game a little bit faster. I'm not saying it's some huge effect. It's just one little extra thing in that outside zone that can kind of wear those defenses down just a little bit more. Certainly was the case back in the original iteration of this offense with Shanahan, where part of what Terrell Davis would be just hammering you all day on that tough guy to bring down. They're constantly moving you out to the edge. You're constantly have to run down. You're constantly getting, at that time, you're getting cut block to hell. So you'd have to be cut block to the ground and then pick yourself back up off the ground. They have eliminated that part of it, but it is a system and scheme that not just wears you down, but wears you down at the kind of the highest rate you can be within a team that's going to want to be run-centric in how they attack you. So kind of an interesting little quote there from Murphy on that side of it, and will make them, I think, better prepared to be able to deal with these outside zone teams, especially that Niner team come week 1 into Seattle for the beginning game of the season. I thank you guys for watching today. Sorry about a little bit of the mic issues there at the top. I'll get that corrected. I know where I went wrong on that, but appreciate you bearing with me. If you can do me a favor today and hit that like button, I would really, really appreciate that as well. We'll do a little bit of chat and discussion with you guys today, see where everybody's at. We've got a couple other shows here lined up for the next week. Next couple days as well, as we'll be doing the B&B show tomorrow at 12 o'clock with Brendan. And then, of course, we've got the Friday play-by-play with your Seattle Seahawks and the Kansas City Chiefs rolling to town. Doesn't sound like we're going to get Patty Mahomes this week, and it does not sound, unfortunately, due to a ligament injury in his finger, that we're going to get Jordan Love the week after that with the Green Bay Packers. So your Seahawks defense, it would appear that the toughest test that they might be receiving here all of preseason might just be Patrick or Aiden O'Connell, unless is Wentz still there? I think with the Chiefs, isn't Wentz still there? Maybe we'll get a little Wentz action. That could be fun. You never know on that one. A couple donations. See where you guys are at with the chat. I appreciate you guys watching again today. If you can hit that like button, I would really appreciate it. Helps the channel grow. Polly704 has been celebrating 10 months, almost a year as a Hawks Nest member. I appreciate you for that, man. He says, we're getting close, y'all. Hey, we're getting close. We're already 3 weeks through training camp. Count them 3 weeks through training camp. We got one preseason game in the books. This thing is going to roll around fast to the other side real quick, Polly. So I can taste it, man. The season is almost here, and what a year it is going to be. I think we're going to be in for a fun one this season, Polly. But thank you, man. Appreciate that support on the channel as a member. If you want to be a member today, we've got a variety of things coming up here for you as far as benefits go. You get the PFF scores the day after the game. We're going to be doing Thursday night football during the season. We're going to be doing a call-in show, too, for members and patrons of the channel. You can also become a patron. Both of those have the patron link is in the description section below. But thank you for that support, Polly. Jeffrey A. Thistle, thank you for the $5 donation. He says, I said from the beginning last year, it bothered me that the OC was hiding in the press box. Leads to poor communication. Don't care what he did for UW. I agree with you as well, and especially when you can see the fruits of that. You can see the lack of benefit of that up with him up in that booth in that way, where you're feeling the frustration from the players. You're seeing it times on the face of Gino and DK down there, and there was definitely a weird thing that was going on with Grubb that, on top of the other weird things that were there with him as far as sometimes as a play caller and just his unwillingness to run the ball when he desperately needed to do so. But also just the weird sort of disconnect that sort of existed, where Grubb kind of walked in, it felt like, just by the way, listening to DK talk, how for years him and Tyler Lockett, not just him, but him and Tyler Lockett had, looked at the film and studied the film, and they'd found some plays throughout the week that they saw was going to work against defenses, and that they could go to their offensive coordinator, be Waldron, the prior OC, and that they could be able to say, hey, this stuff's going to kind of work. Can we kind of implement this in? And Grubb was just kind of like, I don't want any of that. I don't want to hear from you guys. And then that to me feels like an extension when you have that guy that operates that way during the week with those players, who then goes up into his little ivory tower booth and can't be bothered and doesn't want to interact with the players on that at that point. Now, this is a relationship business, and you're not just up there as I think some coaches get. This is where I think coaches can go really wrong in their mentality, where the ego takes over and they're sort of up, I'm high on the hog and my stuff don't stink. And I'm going to tell you what time it is, and I don't want to hear anything from you. I don't think that works. I think that's, especially at the pro level, that doesn't work. You can get away with that in college when you're telling youngsters and kids that, but when you're trying to be at the pro level, that's not going to work. And part of why I'm not sure Grubb really maybe built quite to do the OC stuff at the pro level. I think he's a good OC, but probably more a good college OC, or maybe potentially a good college head coach down the line. But this was a place that I was too frustrated with, especially when you could just feel on the sideline so much of the players' frustration with what was going on in the process. And that's where having the guy on the sideline can look a guy in the eye, that can settle guys down, can put a hand on his shoulder and be like, all right, I hear you. We're going to get this figured out. I hear you. We're going to find some answers here for you. I think that's going to provide a benefit this year too as well. And I agree with you on it. I didn't quite understand, especially as you could tell halfway through the year, just get down there. I understand you want to start out here up in the booth, but where this thing's going, not to hell in a handbag, but it's getting close. Get down on the field and try to, sort some things out. At least communicate with these guys. Just even to try something different than what he was doing, right, Jeffrey? Because it just kind of got worse over time. But thank you, man. Appreciate the donation. It's good to see you in the house, brother. Beyond Balance with a $10 donation. Thank you for that, Beyond Balance. That is very kind of you as well. You guys are awesome as ever in that respect. He says, is it me or does the energy chemistry of this team remind you of 2012 also? It does. I don't want to ever go to the place of trying to compare that we're building a team that's like 2012. Every era is different. Every era is going into just kind of a just general different tone. The other thing with it too, which we always got to be cognizant of, was just how special that team was, and the 12, 13, 14 team, kind of in historical terms, just that they were not just a great team, but an all-time kind of great team. But I think that you're still right, and you're on it in where it really matters here, which is that this is a team that's getting the buy-in, and it's the part that I really do watch for with these teams. You can get the talent. Just about every NFL team out there stacking the talent. Can you get that buy-in? Can you get all the guys showing up into OTAs? Can your practices be run with an absolute ferocity where those guys are competing every day and they're in that grind every day and they understand? It's like I talk about, it's almost like being a time traveler, because it's something that you just, any person that's gone through the youth gets this, where, and some people can be in their 20s and recognize it, but a lot of us in our 20s and in our 30s, we might be working hard, might be doing some stuff, not like being totally lazy, but we don't quite always capture the moment for, hey, how fleeting this can be. Your NFL career is fleeting, and the potential and to be great and to go win a Super Bowl, it's going to be fleeting, that opportunity. You're here right now. Tomorrow's not promised to no one. Can you maximize everything today? Can you do all of the right things that you need to do today to make that thing happen tomorrow? And understand that it's not just we all go, yes, and then it happens, but it's a day-by-day grind. It's a day-by-day commitment. And to that respective things, Beyond Balance, that's absolutely the feel that I get from this team, that they're in that pocket of understanding what they're doing, that you've got a lot of veterans on this team that have played in this league for a good amount of time, who recognize that importance of recognizing today, and then don't get lost into just thinking about you got this long life and all these things you're going to do, and you got all the time in the world to accomplish it and all the time in the world to accomplish that. Because when you're young like that, you think you're going to live forever. I'm sure as a 23-year-old football player, you think you're going to play the sport forever. But can you actually then kind of capture sort of looking at it like you would as a 50-year-old man looking back at your career, right? Can you jump into the brain of where you'd be as a 50-year-old man and go, no, do everything you can today on this. It will mean everything if you can lock this in today. It will mean everything if you can understand that your sacrifice today and laying it on the line today is going to make you so much more satisfied 20 years down the line when you're looking back at your career. And I think that's a hard connection to have between players and their future selves, supposedly. It's hard for not just players, but individuals, ourselves included on that. Can you capture that? Because I think the talent's here now. I think the coaching is here now. I think you got the general manager here now. I think you got the money to spend if you want to go spend it there now. All that other stuff is there. It's ready to go. And this final part be the part that now comes forward to elevate you in that way. And it seems like, Beyond Balance, we're seeing the indications that thing is where this is headed. And it is, as much as anything else coming into the season, one of the most encouraging aspects of the Seattle Seahawks team. They're getting it. To every man on this roster, they're getting it. Your stars are being your leaders. Your youngsters are understanding they have to rise up to become leaders. This is what it will take to take that final step, and it should get people jacked. Jeffrey Thistle, thank you for another donation. Hit me with the double dip dono. I appreciate you for that, man. He says, Oot stays healthy, better than Juszczyk 100%. Well, I think he definitely has aspects that he can provide where you can see him better than Juszczyk. I think with Juszczyk, you always have a guy that's been a capable blocker. I don't know if I'd call him a dominant blocker from the fullback position. He's more of just that ultimate kind of tweener guy that you can kind of bounce all over the place a little bit. And especially I think as a pass catcher and route runner, he's probably got, Oot's beat in that way, but he's also probably about 20 to 25 pounds lighter, Jeffrey. So when it comes to him, running around looking a little bit quicker out there, there's kind of good reason. And I think that to your point, with Oots as a pass catcher, that he's close enough to Juszczyk as a pass catcher, but that he's probably going to be a better blocker and that's going to be where you're really going to feel his true measurable impact. And that's where I think he will have Juszczyk beat, partly just because he's just built to do it better than Juszczyk. And Juszczyk is a little bit in that lighter realm for fullbacks, historically speaking. So I've always, when I've watched him block, been like, he's very good technically. He lands this thing on the right spot and all that, but he's not a guy that's really going to dominate you physically. Whereas we saw with Oots, and you get these lighter linebackers now, Jeffrey, that'll kind of rock 226 on game day. You're 226 pounds and you have a 270-pound fullback meeting you in the hole. This is why back in the day, those off-ball inside linebackers would be 245 pounds, because that's what they would used to have to deal with on these fullbacks meeting in the hole, and you couldn't be that 225. You might be able to get down light, and now you can go back there and be all great in coverage and make plays in coverage, but you're going to get smacked in your face when you're losing 30 pounds in the hole to a fullback coming down with some momentum at you. So I think I do agree with you on that side of it, that I think that from a blocking aspect, the feel we got off from the Raiders and what we've heard about him and all of that's where he could really be a great neutralizer, Jeffrey. And I think he's going to spring a bunch of big runs. Just thinking about him and Kenneth Walker and leading the way for Walker, and Walker now knowing he's got that Secret Service agent who's going to take away that initial penetration, and that'll just make Walker, I think, that much more comfortable and that much more lethal. Well said, Jeffrey. Well said, man. Jeffrey with another $5. Thank you for that, Jeffrey. I really appreciate that. He says, for all those donuts, says, can I just say having Jamal Adams at middle linebacker actually made a ton of sense? He looked good there. Props to Pete for doing that. Hope they do well. Yeah, I was very impressed by what I saw from Jamal Adams in that game. People were kind of knocking and being like, oh, you're going hard like this for the second stringers. But to me, it's like, I get it, man. The guy saw nearly the end of his career prematurely ended because of injury. It seems like he has busted his butt to try to get him back as close as he could be to where he was prior to the injury. And sometimes, like when they are as major as he sustained, it doesn't just come back after a year. It takes you a couple of years to kind of really get your footing back under you. And he's found a home there. I was very impressed by how he looked. He looked quick. He looked sudden. His instincts showed up there where he was on it with that. And you remove him out of coverage at that point. You got him on tight ends and running backs versus having to take wide receivers down the field and cover too. He can do that type of stuff. So props to them, absolutely. I think that's a cool story. I'd love to see Jamal be able to reclaim some of his career. And you certainly love it too, on top of it, to see a guy do that who had to make that tough transition. He'd already made his millions of dollars, could have just kind of cashed it in, could have gone home, could have said, look, it wasn't my fault. I got this crazy injury, kind of a la like my dad did as a running back. At least I got my money before that happened. But he didn't do that. Instead, he came back out and he said, no, I want to still play the sport. I love the sport. I'll find a way to get out there. And hopefully it takes off for him, Jeffrey. I'd love to see it, man. Love to see it. I hope he does well too. And thank you, man, for all the donations today, Jeffrey. You're awesome as ever on that front. I really appreciate you, brother. Kyle from South Park. Sorry about that, Kyle. Thank you for the $2 donation. He says, let's get Jimmy G. Jake thinks he can win. Yeah, I was having fun last night. If you get a chance, please do go over and check out the NFC West Roundtable. We had a really good time, and I was a little feisty last night in retrospect. But yeah, just the way Jake was kind of talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. And the best part about that is that, Jake will gas up certain guys at times and, like this, what he'll do with the secondary and whatnot. And, you got to check him on some of those here and there. And what's nice about last night is he's sitting here gassing up Jimmy Garoppolo, and I've got a literal Niners fan in the stream with us. So it was just so easy to just go, oh, Jimmy's going to do that, Jake. Oh, Jimmy's going to do this, Jake. And then I go over to Jesse and I say, so Jesse, do you think if Stafford goes down, the Rams got any chance with Garoppolo? The answer is no. The answer is hell to the no. Hell to the no, 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 no. But I do think Jake in his heart has kind of convinced himself a little bit that if something does happen to Stafford with the back, that they can find a way to still get themselves to the playoffs with him. No, I don't think so. Not to mention the whole part too with the guy where it's like, you put Jimmy out there for 2 or 3 games, he's getting injured. Literally have former players calling him a bitch for his lack of toughness. And I've seen him multiple times be out in games where they were like, we think he's going to play this week, and then he just doesn't. I don't buy it. Rams are done. They're spent. They're shot if Stafford can't roll. Their hopes lie on that. If it goes down, they're done. Dunsky. And I think they know it. They know it. Garoppolo can maybe get you through a game. He can maybe get you here or there, just a little bit this or that, but he's not winning anything for anybody. No chance. Some questions I'm seeing in the chat in regards to the Trailblazers selling. Ol agrees. He says the Trailblazers just sold. How long until the Seahawks? I think that there's going to be some time on this one. I think that Jody was not as much interested in the Trailblazers and holding on to them and that just kind of waiting for the right price. I think with the Seahawks, I get the impression that she likes owning the team and that she doesn't feel really rushed. There's nothing in the trust, Paulie, as far as the timeline for selling. As far as the Seattle being kept in the Seahawks being kept in Seattle, this is a very big concern, Paulie, for a lot of different people in the Seahawks fandom. I understand why. You've spent a lot of your life, if you lived as long as me as well, watching multiple owners come through this city and try to take franchises time and time again. We had one that actually pulled it off. So these fears and concerns, I'm completely understanding. With that said, let me satiate these worries and concerns. As I understand it, that the team couldn't be, just bare minimum, couldn't be moved, I don't believe, until 2040. That's part of, I believe, the original lease agreement that exists with the city and Seattle, for the city having to kick the money in to pay for the stadium back in the early 2000s. I don't know that for sure, but I want to say that I remember that being a bit of the stipulation. Let's throw that out the door, though, and say that didn't exist. I don't think that Paul Allen, a guy that saved the Seattle Seahawks, that came out of his own pocket to build a stadium here, that brought the championship here, that's revered in this city in the way that he's revered, would have set the stage to where when he passed, all that would go into the trash bin. Everything that you work so hard to accomplish, just because you die, you now toss it all away. In fact, I think quite the opposite. So I think that you're going to see stipulations from Jody Allen that whoever you sell the team to now and in the future, I wouldn't be surprised if they find a way to put the stipulation to where if you are a team that buys the team now and sells them in the future, that you have to put a stipulation within the sale of the contract that the team cannot be moved out of Seattle. I have almost single-digit percentage points of concern or worry that the Seattle Seahawks will ever be moved out of Seattle. Is it zero? No. But is it pretty close to zero for me? Yeah. I just can't see Paul doing it that way myself. CD says, did Mike say the Tyrese Knight knee wasn't an issue? That it's something else he didn't want to disclose? Oh, I hadn't heard an update on that, CD. I didn't hear Mike really kind of get into the depths on in that presser from a couple days ago, but that's encouraging if that's the case. I hope that's what he said. Duran, I'm wondering if there'll be an extension for a 2022 draftee. I think eventually Cross will be the first one that gets knocked out, but you've got a variety of guys that could be in linemen here, Duran. Kenneth Walker, Reek Woolen, Kobe Bryant potentially, maybe even. I don't think Kobe's going to be probably done because Nick's probably going to take his spot within the next couple of years, but I do think that you're probably going to see one or two of these guys. Boye Mafe in there too. Somebody's going to probably get a deal, Duran, maybe two, but I don't think everybody. CD says Niners need this draft to work out. How many starters have they drafted since 2021 that are still on the team, with one being a kicker, with only Purdy being a Pro Bowler? And even the kicker, CD Woods, they're barely hanging on to him. So you see, even that success story is still kind of but is it a success story? And they've not drafted particularly well, man. They've had their share of misses here through the years, and it's hurt them. Third round tight end that you cut off the team. They've had a couple of those situations go on. So, they definitely need this draft class to hit for them. That roster is getting older and older and older. So we'll see. Thomas, I watched the Raiders broadcast at halftime. They weren't happy with how offense played, but they gave Seattle second team compliment for how good they are. Yeah, I think that's pretty well accurate outlook of it. Raiders really started kind of crawling back into that game once we really had kind of the four stringers out there in the late third quarter. That when it kind of mattered and we counted and all that, you were handling them pretty well on both sides of the ball up until that point. So that'd be my outlook on it too. There. Karen says our OC last year played real football like a bad Madden player. That's an accurate way of putting it, Karen. Dictus says Brandon's right. The entire Coach Kubiak interview on Seattle Press Pass is a great to watch. I can't understate it more. I grabbed a couple of the clips from his interview, but both him and Mike Mac's recent interviews were really, I think, illuminating and just cool interviews as well. I thought those guys were giving us some nice little tidbits in there rather than just kind of empty coach speak. Thomas, I have to say the offense looked better than I thought. KC and Green Bay will be a test, but I think they will be fine. I agree. I concur on that one, man. I feel the same way. Thomas's Dan Vian said, most O-lines have a weak spot. Heck, the Eagles' O-line was weaker at right guard. I think Bradford is crap, but if the other are good, then we're okay. Yeah, you can kind of overcome it. I think I do land myself a little bit on this, Thomas, and that this may be a bit of the truth, that every offensive line's got to deal with something a little bit weak somewhere. But I've also do kind of sign up to the fact that your offensive line is only as good as your weakest link. And if your weakest link is awful, it can sink a lot of the rest of your offensive line. So that's also to me where it's kind of the other end of that scale a little bit. But in general terms, I agree. Patrick Zong says, I know we're far out from next year's draft, but hopefully we draft Jake Slaughter. Should be our center if we get him. He's one of my first guys up on my list for evaluating and scouting this year, Patrick, because I've had a couple people mention him as a possibility. And maybe a guy you look at targeting even the first round, if he's as good as kind of people are speaking to on it. With a name like Jake Slaughter, that's a great center name. So he's one of the guys I'm going to be taking a look at for sure. Absolutely, Patrick, and that's a great mention on that. Got to pay attention to. I hear, too, it's a good, Patrick, sounds like a great class for centers, which also works in our favor. That also ain't too bad a thing to hear there as well. Steven says, man, I'm really pulling for Bradford to take the right guard spot. KC will be an interesting practice. It will. And I would like to see it too, man. I think he can give you enough in there even for some of the slight limitations he has. The good side of it could be really good. And he's had some games he's put together where he's looked really strong out there. Kieran says, Hawks Nest, I'll be honest, I don't care where a play caller is. I prefer them in the booth if they're established to the team because the X's and O's are so much easier to see. But if you're new, don't know. That's where I think with Kubiak, there's not necessarily got to be an overall, this is the 100% way you got to roll it. It can be team dependent and where you're at as far as maybe you've been there for a few years and it's less reliant on you being down there. I think you can do it both ways. You can. I think where they're at right now, to your point though, and when you're starting out initially and when you have a team that has a lot of moving parts that need to come together offensively, that's probably more of now that needs to be more of the drive down onto the field. Once you get everything kind of set and put in place, maybe then you can start to slide back up into the booth. But I think, too, some of it can be mitigated, too, for me, Kieran, with do I have a guy that sees the game the way I look at it from the booth? Can I have a guy that sees how the coverages are playing out and then communicate that down to me on the field? I think you can find a guy like that, where then it makes it a little less that it has to be your eyes on it unless you're just seeing things so much brilliantly versus any other coaches. And maybe that could be the case too, where you're just so smart in how you see it versus them that they don't see the little things you're able to see from up on the top side of it. Gary, if you got to teach your scheme and make quick adjustments and you can see it clear from the sidelines, great. Some guys need to have that man-to-man connection to make it happen. Exactly. I think there's a real benefit to looking a guy in the eye. I think there's a benefit if you have two guys that aren't on the same page, pulling them together and being like, okay, this has got to go here and you got to go there with it. You understand? This has got to be to this and that. I think that there is a little bit of an uptick on that you just can't get from the booth. CR says, hello from Germany. How you doing from Germany out there, CR? How you doing, chat? Excited for the preseason? Any wishes before the preseason ends? For me, I would love to see just two things. The health continue to maintain in a really relatively good place as it's been. And maybe to see us make a nice little, big little move. Just make some little, just kind of under the radar. Ooh, that's nice. I like getting that. That was a good little final piece here before the start of the season. But those would be my two things, CR. It's good to see you in the house, man. Thomas says, yes, Grubb wasn't good, but I wonder quite a bit if Macdonald truly bought into Grubb's offensive system. Honestly, it's because of inexperience of Macdonald and his late hire. Yeah, I just think it wasn't a good match between the two of them, to your point, Thomas. I don't think you put a defensive-minded coach together. I think that I saw what they were kind of trying to do, and you can see where, in theory, it potentially could work out. It just wasn't in practicality something that fitted well when you saw them go together. And you might be right. Macdonald might not have really ever kind of fully bought into it, which I can't necessarily blame Mike on that when he was watching things that were probably systematically not correct in the way that they were setting things up, systematically not correct in his sequencing of play, systematically not correct in how he would not find better balance between the run and the pass at times. And that probably gets a coach eventually to a place of checking out. Williams says, hey, B, are the Seahawks going to cut Nwosu next year and give Mafe an extension? I do think this is Nwosu's final year, William. I do. And it's not necessarily his fault with it. It's just I don't know if he's going to ever get really healthy enough to get back to the player he was at this point, really. Kind of worried about that. Mafe has got to do, I think, a little bit more to earn his extension. He's been a very hot and cold player at times. He's been a very solid player as a run defender, but as a pass rusher, definitely very hot and cold. And I think the team's looking for a little bit more of an overall consistency throughout a season with him on that to then give him the contract they have to give him, because it's going to be well over $20 million. It's going to be basically George Karlaftis' deal, bare minimum. And if that's the case, you need to have a guy that I think is a little bit more well-rounded overall as a player, and that there is a little bit less of that up and down nature to the game there. Jeffrey says, our players in 2012 were so good they made Pete's dumb scheme look genius. Cover 1 zone, or is it cover 3 zone? Cover 3 zone. Yeah, you're right. There's a little cover 1, cover 3. I will say that's that thing, though, that the players could do where they could make adjustments in play to do something that was completely off the reservation as far as like a cover 3 look. And the guys, like, suddenly you've got Richard running man when the other team didn't think it, because they knew that that's just how they were going to attack them there. That's part of also what made the Legion of Boom so brilliant, is that it was a simplistic scheme, but those guys individually could do certain things within it that were just little minor adjustments that were impossible to predict, and definitely were not in the built schematics of the play, you know, what your role was supposed to be. Thomas says, looking at Bama's offensive system last year was way different than what Seattle ran. DeBoer ran more trick plays while Grubb ran very little. Yeah, that was one thing I thought we were going to get from Washington that we didn't get as much last year, Thomas, was more of the trick plays. And the irony of this is that when you ran the trick plays, the hook and lateral that you ran twice and those third and longs that you got conversion on, or the Jackson Smith and Jigba deep throw to DK Metcalf, it worked when you ran it. And at UW, you averaged more than one trick play a game, but this does seem to be a Kellen DeBoer thing more than a Grubb thing. Jordan says, Pete's scheme was great during 2012-15 because offenses were trying to throw deep and run the ball. Obviously, now offenses adjusted to more short routes and seam passes. Very well said, Jordan. Yeah, it was the right scheme for the right time where offenses were at. That's for sure, on being able to run it that way. Seahawk Tua, how you doing, man? How you doing? Sean says he's going to be more like Mike Allstott. I hope he's Mike Allstott. That'd be awesome. Mike Allstott's one of the all-time favorite players to watch. He's so much fun. Still going back and checking out his highlights. Feed me more Seahawks. Thank you for the $2 donation. Feed me. Our best players being leaders is so beneficial. It is. You're a try-hard guy that's on the edge of the roster, but you're really vocal. I think that there's only so much you go up to a star player and you need to do it this way. You need to, I need to do what? Who are you? What do you do here? Aren't you the janitor? I don't think I need to do nothing. I think you need to ride on my back is what you need to do, bruh. So I think that having the guys that are Leonard Williams coming there and talking, I'm one of the best defense tackles in the league. What are you going to say to me? I'm Julian Love, one of the best safeties in the league, coming up to you and instructing you. What are you going to say to him? Devin Witherspoon's an absolute dog on the field, lays it on the line every single time. That guy comes over to the sideline. He's got blood dripping off of his arm, a bruised face. He's looking you in the eyes, asking you why your effort ain't 100% today. Yeah, you're going to stand on up and you're going to be held to account, aren't you? Your best players have to be your leaders too. Not every single one of them, but if you're going to have leadership on the team, it's also a great point on your part. Got to come from your best players. William Tarkowski, thank you for the $2 donation. And William, again, sorry, a little late on acknowledging the donut, but answering your question on this one. But he was asking again on the Nwosu. Says, hey, B, are they going to cut Nwosu next year? And yeah, the answer is just it's going to likely happen. Now, if Nwosu has some really, great year this season where he suddenly is able to get healthy and he comes back and he finds some effectiveness this season, that can be then the case where you don't have to necessarily do it that way. But right now, Uchenna Nwosu carries a $20 million cap hit next year for 2026, William. And on that cap hit, he's only carrying $8.5 million of dead money, which is not super cheap, but what you're left with at that point basically is a cap savings is $11.5 million will be saved by moving on from Uchenna Nwosu next year. And I would expect that the team is going to do that. If, again, he comes out and he's able to reclaim some things, maybe you make that decision tougher. I think even if he's at a good year this year, they're not going to bring him back at the $20 million cap number. They'll find a way to lower that down. But they have set the stage here where this is probably going to be a cut after this year, I would say. CD Woods, thank you for the $5 donation, CD. Appreciate you for that, brother. Says, Jake is funny as heck. His takes are insane, but that's what makes it great. I love it too, man. I mean, this is the nature and to me the fun part of doing these roundtable shows is that we're all going to have our homerism. We're all going to have our bias. We're all going to have some crazy takes in how we outlook it. And you could have these 4 different, outlooks where a lot of what we do and how we do it, when we do collabs with other Seahawks creators or other Ram creators or Niner creators being to your own people, so to speak, you're not challenged as much on this stuff. You have a little bit more of the echoey chamber. And I think that's what makes the NFC West roundtable nice is that you have all different parts that are really going to be able to kind of challenge each other from every direction on this. And I think it makes it hopefully better and more entertaining to watch because that is the case. But Jake loves his Rams. He believes in that team. I've said that he's got a reason to feel overall very confident in the team. There's some of the individual parts that I'll kind of clip him for a little bit and I'll knock him for a little bit. Like, Rams got the best secondary in the NFC West, those kind of take stuff. But as far as the overall goes, and that he's got rightful reason to feel confident about a team that has made noise in the playoffs the past couple of years, that has bounced and gotten right around the Aaron Donald retirement as if it was no thing, which I think a lot of organizations would not have been able to do that so seamlessly and easily. He's got a right to be confident on that. But some of his takes are pretty funny. And last night, when I started sensing him going down the line on Jimmy Garoppolo, I had to bring Jesse into it. I'm like, Jesse, come on, voice of reason. You've watched more of Jimmy Garoppolo than any man in this room. Come on, please tell me that this is not what he's trying to say it is. And Jesse's like, yeah, it's not. Cal from South Park got another dono in here. Bear with me 1 second, Cal. I'll be right back. All right. Thank you for bearing with me. Appreciate all the support today, you guys. You're just awesome as ever. Kyle, thank you for another $5 donation. I really appreciate you for that, brother. He says, all we have to do is win the division to have a shot. This isn't the AFC where the 4 teams are decided every year. Every team in the NFC can be beat. Well, Kyle, I agree with you 100% here. You have times where the NFC is stronger, the AFC is stronger. It's an ebb and a flow. And right now, the AFC really is much, I think, guided by the fact that there's just so many really good quarterbacks over on that side of the ball. It just makes it what it is. There's good teams in general on top of that, but it is just you have so many of those good, great quarterbacks out there. And the NFC does feel wide open. Does Detroit feel like they're maybe due to take a kind of step back? The Niners, are they kind of at the end of a little bit of their window? Can Stafford's back hold up for a full season? Washington had a great year last year, but can Jaden Daniels replicate that, or does a sophomore slump kind of come into effect a little bit? Eagles are going to be tough, but that's also a team that, you do pay attention to with a lot of games they've played over the past couple of years. I mean, they're certainly really, really good, but even the Packers they're kind of talented, but I mean, what are they going to be? The Minnesota Vikings, J.J. McCarthy is a basically rookie quarterback now coming in to take over that team. Atlanta thinks they're going to be good. I don't. Tampa Bay, I know they've been pretty decent the past couple of years, but I have a hard time buying into them too. I agree, Kyle. I look at it and every team that maybe even is decent in this kind of conference, you can kind of pick at a little bit, and I think rightfully so, where when you go to like a team like the Baltimore Ravens over there in the AFC, it's like, yeah, they're just kind of a monster, and they are a monster. The Buffalo Bills, yeah, they're just kind of a monster, and they're a monster. Kansas City Chiefs are always a monster because they always got, at the very least, the officials in their back pocket and then some good players on top of it. And it doesn't even stop there. You still have a lot of other dangerous teams around there out in the AFC. So I agree with you. It's right there for us to take. And I will say, I know all these national pundits say that we have no chance. And there'll be a lot of people in Seahawks fandom say, no, not this year. It's maybe 26, maybe when we get the quarterback, maybe when Milroe's ready to go. I tell you what, I think this team's got as good a chance as any. And that there have been shocker teams that have come up in the NFL. It's not always been those teams that go and win Super Bowls that everybody identifies at the start of the year. Oh, this is the team, or that's the team, or that's the team, or that's the team. It's one of those four, and nobody else can win it. Quite the opposite. Throughout a lot of NFL history, there are times, absolutely, where teams can rise up in a given season kind of out of nowhere and become that team. And this team's got the talent to do it. It's just the talent coming together, the coaching with the scheme, getting it implemented fast and quickly. Macdonald's second year, taking another step forward in that way. It's going to require those things, but it's right there. I agree, Kyle. It's right there for you to go take it, man. Right there. Randall McDaniel in the house. What's up, Randy? It's good to see you, brother. Really good to see you. I hope you're having a great day out there, not working too hard, dropping a $20 donation on your boy. I really, really appreciate you for that. Thank you, Randall. Good to see you, and thank you to everybody. You guys are unbelievable on the support. Thank you so much. It says, hey, bro, regarding the topic, what have you taken from Mac's presser? To me, Macdonald seems focused and locked in. Seems like he knows they have a chance to be good. Speed of the game is the speed of the coach. I think like we often do see it with this, Randall, that we're seeing it very much in alignment. I think that in Mike Macdonald in year 2, here's a couple of things that I'm seeing from him. Number one, a comfort and just a general at-easeness in what he's doing. And that, last year you could feel him kind of like getting used to the press conferences, getting used to the way the questions are coming, that the responsibilities of that. You could feel a little bit of the struggle with that as he tried to find the balance and just wanting to be a coach and just wanting to coach defense and just wanting to do what he does. And not being able to have as much opportunity to do that as much, I think, was frustrating for him, whereas I think he's found that balance this year. I think that he's got a lot of confidence in this team and that he knows what he's got. He knows he's returning all those starters. He knows the talent that's on this team and that's true and real. And that coaches know whether or not they've got enough bullets in the gun to get this done. And he knows he's got a couple extra magazines. So I feel that as well. I think that when you talk about him being focused and locked into, part of a little extension out of that I'd add on top of that, Randall, is that he seems as well that he understands what he needs to do to get this to where it needs to go. And that the plain spoken way he goes about this, that there's no real fluff, that there's no real, he just kind of cuts right through it to the heart of it. It's part of why I wanted to do these clips today, Randall, and featuring some of what he discussed, because whether he's talking about Byron Murphy or Anthony Bradford, and hey, he knows what's on the line. He knows what he needs to do at this point. He knows that he's got his opportunity here. Now it's on him. Does he want it? When he's talking plainly about players like that in that fashion, I think that just speaks to him being very understanding of what this is going to take, and that I got to hit guys between the eyes, and that these are all good indicators to me of a healthy situation that's going on in the background. But then too, on top of this, Randall, a couple of the other quotes that I played, hearing Kubiak talk about Mike Macdonald and how much he's got these players playing hard and they're not complaining. Let me just play it real quick again here. Listen to this quote on how he's talking about how he's got these players practicing from Kubiak.
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out thus far is the expectations are very clear and the practices are extremely physical. We come out here for 2+ hours and our guys are going hard, and you don't hear any complaining about how hard practice is, because that's the expectation. And guys know that going into practice and they embrace it, and that comes from the head coach.
Mike Macdonald is one of the rare young coaches that's a first-time head coach who has been around guys that have been to the mountaintop, has been around guys that have built elite programs with the Baltimore Ravens, with the Michigan Wolverines, with the San Francisco 49ers, two very smart minds, guys that themselves come from a father that was a head coach. And what he could glean off of them and learn off of them, being both under each of them at two different spots. I think that's part of what gives him such great confidence that sort of belies his age, Randall, where a guy that is typically only 38 years old as a head coach of the NFL is having to kind of learn through that stuff the hard way. And maybe once eventually he gets to 46, 47, 48, he's learned the hard lessons and now he's there. Those guys, I think, were able to kind of accelerate his process in this respect of things. And so when he's hitting guys between the eyes, when he's being plain spoken, he understands this is what will resonate with players. I don't have to play the game. I don't have to dress them up in a press conference and then give them tough love behind the scenes. I can be straightforward on each end of that, and it will help me drive them into the right direction of where I'm trying to get them to go. And that's what great leaders do, because they know that right kind of formula to get that player to where you're trying to get him to go. Does he need a kick in the pants? Does he need the tough love? I think the consistency of messaging and keeping that always in the same place and never kind of moving off of that is a big part of keeping those players very clear on what your expectation is of them. But getting those guys playing so hard, the intensity ratcheted up, Randall getting all of the guys to show up at OTAs like he did and those vets, it means it's partly that his messaging is resonating, but these players are also recognizing the fact that they have a special coach in Mike Macdonald. That this guy is that guy they've referenced over and over as the genius, smart, super nerd, knows it, that they understand, wow, we got a guy he's cut from a different cloth than normal coaches in this NFL. He's got a little bit something extra there in that he brings that can help us out. And if we can just do our part, this melds together well and we can become a championship team. I think that's what we are seeing taking root here. And that is beginning to start, the bloom of that is starting to occur and happen. But absolutely agree with everything you said on it. And I think he knows that this team is going to be good long-term, that he's going to get there long-term. But I'm sure he would love to drive that for this year because he sees that the timing can also be this season with what he's got. It doesn't have to be 26 or 27. It can happen right mother effing now. Right now. So I agree with you on that, Randall, but we're usually often in agreement on this type of stuff. And love the feeling I'm getting off Mike Mack. Love the energy I'm getting off him. I think that this thing is really clicking into place for him and that we've got that lightning in the bottle kind of situation here. I really do. But thank you, Randall. Appreciate that $20 donation. You're awesome, brother, as ever. Space, thank you for the $10 donation, Space. He says, do you think Horton will be a starter this year? Yes, I do. I think what's happening in the background, and this is only a prediction and only kind of me trying to read some tea leaves and what we're hearing from press conferences and what I saw in practice, what I saw in the scrimmage, what we saw in the preseason game, what we're hearing from players in the background in regards to how they're talking about Horton, what you're hearing in the coaches talking about Marquez Valdes-Scantling, having a good camp, but you're having to kind of wait your turn a little bit by Horton because he's just being that good. He's doing that well for the team. And I think he is ascending as well as any rookie in this class. And that's saying something. You got a Nick Emmanwori that's showing signs of being an instantaneous star. When you got Gray Zable, who looks like an instantaneous starter at the left guard position and will be so for 10 years going forward. It's no small thing to then be a guy right up there with them in the ranks of that. But I do believe, Space, absolutely I do, that he has crawled his way up into the bare minimum 4th on the depth chart right now. And I do feel like if we're going where this is tracking right now, he is going to be your 3rd wide receiver by the time we actually get to games. Doesn't mean Marquez won't also get some snaps out there and that you'll be fluctuating those guys in. Guys like Bobo are going to have a harder time getting out on the football field this year because of just how dynamic Horton is as a pass catcher. I think he's just going to force the coaches to be out on the football field, and that's going to be a good thing for Seattle because we need that help at the wide receiver position. We would love a guy like this that could ascend in that way. We'd love to be able to get essentially our kind of Puka Nacua that the Rams got to benefit from a couple of years ago and getting a guy in the 5th round who can be an impactful wide receiver for you. That is a hell of a get in this sport to be able to grab a guy like that. So I do just feel like that's where this is going, Space. He's had that kind of camp and he looked that impressive in person on top of it. The guy's kind of the full meal deal for the wide receiver position. He can play on the outside. He's probably faster than the 4.4 one time he was timed at the combine when he was still injured. He can run a complete route tree. He's got a little bit of size at 6'1", so he's not diminutive and undersized, and he's going to get pushed around by press coverage. So I think, yeah. On top of the fact can be kind of a bit of a yak guy at times too, which is a little bit of another prerequisite that you need in this system. I think as a yak guy, he's probably going to be better than a Marquez Valdes-Scantling. And I don't know that he's going to be any slower than Marquez. I think Marquez is a 4.37 guy, and I tend to think here with Torrey that he's probably more in that kind of 4.37-ish range as well, bare minimum. So that's what I'm sensing, Space. Thank you for the donation, but that is definitely what I'm getting the sense of here from training camp on this, that this guy is going to be the starter this year. And if not by game 1, by midseason, he's probably sliding into that spot. Probably getting into that spot by that point. But thank you, Space. It's good to see you in the house, brother, too, man. Hope you're doing well. Robbie Red with a $2 donation. Thank you, Robbie. Appreciate that. 10 p.m. kickoff Friday. Man, I missed the West Coast time. Yeah, I don't know if I like the way the NFL is doing this on that, Robbie, to your point. I think it's kind of silly having a preseason game start at 7 p.m. on a Friday. I don't understand the thinking or theory behind this. And it's the NFL's wanting to get eyeballs at all times on it, and they're masters at it, so who am I to question it? But it's not, I don't know if it's, I don't understand it. I just don't. You're getting more eyeballs at 7 p.m., really? On a Friday? I know football is popular, but we're in the middle of summer here. 7 p.m. on a Friday, people are out doing stuff. So it's kind of strange by the NFL to do it this way, Robbie Red. And I don't remember it always being 7 p.m. Maybe I'm forgetting it wrong, but I always thought that it was always usually at least 6 at the latest that they'd start. But 10 p.m. on the East Coast, yeah. People wonder why they don't watch our games. Thank you, Robbie. I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it's be brutal having to watch the Hawks at 10 p.m., having to get up and go to work. Well, you never go to work, I guess, because it's Saturday. Taker610. Thank you for the $5 donation. Taker610. The Trailblazers were just sold for $4 billion. I think a sale of the Seahawks may be closer than we think now that the Blazer domino has fallen. I think you're right about, in general terms, you were never going to have the Seattle Seahawks sell before the Trailblazers. And so that this going first does mean that the next thing up in the crosshairs will be the Seattle Seahawks sale. I do agree with you there. And we do know that the Paul G. Allen Trust does dictate to Jody Allen that she has to sell the team. Everything's got to be liquidated. All items must go. It's just a matter of there's not an inherent timeline in the trust for when that has to happen. It could be today, it could be tomorrow, it could be 5 years from now. I think the one thing that does change the football side of this, Taker, just a bit, I think this does factor in a pretty heavy way, is that right now with basketball, you have a little bit of a retention going on in certain respects. Why aren't they expanding out to Seattle? Why hasn't this already happened? Why haven't they already made the announcement? We heard that they were going to do this in 24, and Vegas and Seattle are going to get new NBA teams. Well, because they can't expand because they're getting ready to potentially retract, if anything. Viewership has gone down. People are as less interested in basketball, I think, as we've seen ever before in the last probably 40 years of basketball. And so are you in a position to expand? No, you're not. You're just not. And so I think that this does factor a little bit back to the Trailblazers, where you look at them from a basketball standpoint and you go, does the value of my team increase by like 15% every 3 years? No, it's a little stagnant right now basketball-wise. So the price that Jody gets today versus 2029 for the Trailblazers is probably not going to be significantly different. Whereas with football, I think these franchises yearly are gaining quite a bit of valuation every single year that you hold on to the team, where there is truly an intrinsic benefit to holding on to that team for that extra 5-6 years because you're going to get so much more profit. But that's just kind of also my sort of subtle guess on it. I think you are right in general terms on this, Taker, and that it does, in general terms mean it. But I just wonder how much that will factor into this, where Jody likes owning the team. We've heard she wants to buy a piece of the team when it does sell, so she's still at least partly an owner. Every year, you get this team increasing the value. I think that's a little bit extra money in her pocket to then be able to buy that team. I'll admit this is all kind of a bit advanced math I'm doing on the scenario and situation with it, but I do think about that as well, as how much that might factor into it to potentially delay it a little bit if the NFL just keeps increasing its value so very much. But probably sooner than later. I do think, though, that even if it does get sold, we'll be in a good position and that we'll be sold to a good owner who will do things correctly and the right way. Feed More Seahawks. Thank you for the $2 donation. Feed Me. It says, D-Law, 34 practicing hard should resonate with the rooks. That's right. Mike Macdonald talked about DeMarcus Lawrence being the best drill player that he has ever seen in his life. And again, your best players are your leaders. What happens when, your best players are also your hardest practicers? Is that a word? Practicers? The hardest at practice? Those that work the hardest at practice? Let's say it right. That's going to make those youngsters look at that. And how do you go soft? How do you go light? How do you go take a rep off? This guy's out here every time giving everything he's got and every bit down to the bottom of his bucket. How do I get to sit over here and be like, no, I need to breathe on this play. No, I'm just gonna kind of do my bare minimum. This is the thing that motivates those youngsters when they're looking to the vets. This guy's been in the league for almost 10 years. This guy's made $130 million he's got sitting in the bank, and he's practicing like that. And I can attest to that, to your point. Watching DeMarcus Lawrence in practice, he destroyed a whole practice's running game. Obliterated it. Obliterated a whole day of training camp practice when you tried to run the ball. He was in the backfield every single time. And it didn't matter who you tried to block him with, double team, didn't matter. He just took it apart. And you're right. You're damn right about that. Guy practicing like that guy giving it all he's got, that many years in the league, that many millions of dollars he's got in his bank account, and you're a rook who hasn't earned jack diddly squat, and you're watching that, and you're going to go take a playoff? You're going to give a little bit less? I don't think so. I don't think so. You ain't going to last in this environment acting like that. You're going to stand out like a sore thumb acting like that. But if you're on a different roster, the players aren't as connected, where the vets feel like the money's already in the bank, that they've already done their job, they're out there, they're doing better than just their job every week. They're doing a little bit better than average. That should be enough. Versus playing balls out, hell on wheels, giving it all you got. Understanding every day of a rep practice, every day of a hard rep practice is another better day for you, a better player that you will be a day, 2 days, months down the line. If you can just keep stacking those days up, you can just keep capturing that individual moment of every individual practice, not getting lost in the sauce of a season, but every day maximizing those opportunities. I think we have that kind of team right now. And that's why I have so much confidence in this team rising up this season to become something, if not great, very close to it. Ron Scheel, thank you for subscribing to the channel, Ron. Folks, please do join Ron Scheel in getting subbed up to the channel. We just passed 19,500 subscribers, which means that we are inside of 500 here to getting to 20,000 subscribers. We're this freaking close. So please do get subbed up like Ron has today. I would really, really, really appreciate it, as it does help this channel out tremendously. We also got some good news here, as we're going to be locking down some sponsorship for the upcoming season here with Sleeper. So very happy with that. Going to get, I think, hooked up here with Hog Media as well. So I'm very, very, very stoked with that. Things are all looking up all the way around. But thank you, Ron, for subbing up to the channel, man. I appreciate you doing that. Big time. Big time, man. Kirian says, who is calling Jimmy G a bitch? So go look it up, Kirian. There is a video of Edelman on a show with the I forget the boys who do that, but Edelman's on a show talking about Jimmy Garoppolo. He's handed a note where Martellus Bennett basically rakes Jimmy Garoppolo for having this very minor injury, and he's supposed to be practicing all week. He's supposed to play, and then Jimmy bailed on them right when he was supposed to play that week. And that forced Jacoby Brissett to have to play with a torn ligament in his thumb. And Jacoby did play. He was tough. He did go out there. And Edelman saying this was for a playoff game. This was for them to try to go and make some noise. And so Martellus called him a bitch. And then they handed Edelman the note and they said, what do you think about those thoughts? And Edelman said, I agree. So you have two pros who played in this sport. Both played a lot of football, both pretty good amount of success, both pointing to a quarterback saying that very thing. And players don't talk about other players like that. So if one of them or two of them start saying stuff like that, especially understanding his track record of always having little nicks and little things, little hangnails that keep him out, it sort of tracks to me too. Dick to Brandon, how many snaps would you like to see Charbonnet and how many for Holani and the starters? Sadly, K9's injuries make me fear he has pro-size fever. Pro-size fever is the worst fever, man. It never goes away. That's the worst part about it. Yeah, I'm not sure what to think with K9 at this point. I'm not sure of where things are going to kind of stand with him. I'm definitely getting concerned. I think part of the concern with K9 then does mean that you have to kind of bubble wrap Charbonnet a little bit here. And so it would be for me, I'd like to see some more of Damian Martinez out there to feel what we got in him. Hololani, I think, is also, can he replicate what he's done? And if he looks so much more different than Martinez, you got to kind of go with Hololani, I think, as their third back at this point. But I'd more want to see those guys, Jarcadia Wright. Let's get a little bit more of a determination of the pecking order between those three guys and roll with that. But keep Charbonnet and kind of bubble wrap till we can get to regular season at this point, pretty much. Jeffrey says, more likely she sells part of the team, forcing us into an ownership committee situation, which will suck balls. It's kind of the new model. I don't disagree with you, Jeffrey, that it's unideal. I'd like a singular voice. I don't want ownership by committee, but the NFL, because of how expensive NFL teams have become, is going to probably be going into this direction more and more. Unless you got Walmart kind of money, you're probably going to be there. And even if you're Walmart kind of money, you're still ending up with a few people that are kind of a part of the process here to make it go. Ricky, is this Seahawks team that can withstand injuries? How comfortable are you with the depth with this team? Kind of depends on the position, Ricky. But in overall general terms, I think that you're very well suited to deal with injuries. I think you're much better suited to deal with injuries than anybody else in the rest of this division. Cardinals just had 2 cornerbacks go down, and they're right on the edge of that cornerback situation being a catastrophe for them. The Niners have a very old roster that's heavily paid and is very much loaded at the top of that roster, where they're very heavy at the top and they're hanging on a little bit of a popsicle sticks as far as their base goes, keeping them up. So you lose a guy like a Warner and a Kittle. Do you have the depth at the tight end position behind those guys to sustain? Where, I think with us, if we lose a guy here, lose a guy there, lose a guy, we still have some of the depth that we can kind of sustain on that. Defensive line, absolutely across the board, you feel that way. I think a little bit so at running back. You've got 3 quarterbacks. You got guys like Horton kind of rising up a bit here with Scandling to make the receiver core at least look good from a depth standpoint, maybe impactfully wise. You lose a Cup or a JSN that goes down that way, but you're able to at least be functional from the position if something like that were to occur. If a Barner goes down, you've got an Arroyo and a Saubert behind them to at least be able to get by at the position, I think, at that point. Obviously, there are other spots that are a little leaner. Your interior of offensive line is not the greatest. Your inside linebacker position is not the greatest. But safety, if you lose a Julian Love, you lose Kobe Bryant. If you lose Julian Love, Kobe Bryant probably goes to more of the free safety role, and Emmanwori slides right into strong safety. So in my opinion, Ricky, I think we're well suited right now to be able to handle injuries. You're 4 deep at your edge glass with Jenna coming back eventually on that. So I think you're much better suited. Again, looking back over at the Niners, for instance, on this, Ricky, where you got Bosa and you got Mykel Williams. One of those 2 guys goes down. There's not a lot there other than that they can really lean on. They need those 2 guys to hold up a lot, both in the run game and as pass rushers this year. Thomas, Brandon, you should look at Parker Brailsford. He's a great center who played for the UW Natty runner-up team. I've seen Parker's Brailsford, and he's solid. My initial outlook of him, I think, was a 4th-round grade last year, but a guy comes back to college, builds on what he did last year, takes another step forward. I could easily see him driving himself up into the 2nd round. Really quick hands, really quick out of his stance, tenacious with it. He gets after it from the center position. He does. I don't think he's got anything physically great in the mobility standpoint or athleticism, but he's solid. So Parker's nice, Thomas. He's nice. I like him. Larry, hey, Brando, I was thinking about the Jones, Drew, and Fred Taylor combo in 2006 and wonder if K9 and Sharp can have a similar impact in this offense. What do you think? I absolutely think that could be the case, Larry. Yeah. We've seen that the 2-headed rushing attack, it can be so just awesome because you're able to basically use the guy that can be a defensive difficulty. You maybe have a defense that handles the bigger backs better and they're good tacklers, but they're not as fast. And you have a fast back that can really then take them apart on a given week. First, let's say if a defense is lighter, more finesse, they can run all over the field. But if you have them have to tackle big guys at that point, they get a little exposed. So week in and week out, Larry, you can kind of use what is the weakness to the defense if it does exist in that way. But 2-head rushing attacks are also nice because you can keep the load balance off the backs. And a guy like Kenneth Walker, especially, who's got so many injuries through his career, having that balance is probably going to be nice for him. So they've got the talent to be that, Larry. There's not any teams outside of one team over the last 13 years that have taken running backs in either the 1st or 2nd round in back-to-back years. And so you're in a unique place as far as the talent these 2 guys have and their ability. It's all about, can you get things up front settled? Can you get an offensive scheme in place to kind of maximize them out? But they've got the ability, they've got the talent to do it. I do believe that, Larry. Both of these 2 guys do. Just about more of the other factors that are kind of somewhat outside their control, except for K9 when it comes to the injury, which even that's kind of outside of his control a little bit. Bobo is my religion says, just watch the roundtable. Jake is delusional. Stafford was literally hyperbolic chamber and taking insane drugs. I don't see them making the playoffs or even having a winning record. He feels very solid. He even intimates here, Bobo, a little bit to us offline before the start of the stream that he might even have some insider info on this when it comes to Stafford and that everything is free and clear and steady as she goes, and it'll be all fine and good. I echo with you, though, epidermal shot in the back. I don't hear about a lot of quarterbacks getting that. That seems like kind of you're at an extreme stage of things if you've reached that territory. Don't know for sure, but it does kind of feel like that a bit, doesn't it? Brian says, how did I miss the notification on this? I don't know, man. I set it up in advance, I think. Probably just last night. If I get more than 24 hours, the notification is usually better. This was a little bit last minute, I think. That was probably the reason. Jordan says, Jody didn't care for the Trailblazers. Agree. I'm not sure it means the Seahawks are getting close to being sold. She is treated both completely differently. That's my sense for it too, Jordan. I see it exactly that way. Thomas, LOB was more a Jimmy versus Joe thing. Once the LOB left, the Seahawks defense was an absolute joke. Coaching is important, but talent is right there. Yeah, agreed. You need both. One doesn't get you versus the other. You need both. I'm not sure who Jody sold the team to. Thomas Dundon, leader of the new group buying the Blazers. Okay. Never heard that name before. Robbie Tom Dundon just really likes the type of logo. Kieran, I just want to shout out the Seattle Sounders again. Absolutely kicking ass right now. 4th in the West, 1st in the League's Cup. Go watch your Seattle soccer team once in a while. Go check them out. Congrats out there to Sounders. Or the Docs, JJ McCarthy has an eye for his new cheerleaders. Let's go. A little distracted. He's a young man, You have that tendency when you're a little young like that. Thomas says last year nobody was talking about Philly winning the Super Bowl. It was Detroit or San Francisco. It's telling what changes last year to this year. Exactly. And that's the beauty of this sport, Thomas, is that things move so fast. Narratives can be hardlined from the year before that get smashed to pieces than the very next season. And that's what is awesome about this sport. Anybody really does have a chance. Anybody's got a shot. Are there teams that got much lesser of a shot from there? Sure. But things can always work right in the right way. Luck can break in the right direction. You can play a real weak schedule. Anything can kind of happen in this sport. Superman says, if Horton can be a star, that would be huge for the ceiling of our offense. You would take this offense to another level if he's able to play like that. Absolutely. And you're right about that. That benefit to this offense, especially being an outside guy, Superman, that he is really a guy that can work out there. That's a huge, huge, huge boon. Zoom and boom, referring to the offense and defense. I like it. Zoom and boom. Let's go. That's good. That's catchy. Yeah, Jonas, we could see a lot of Horton at X. That's what that frees you up. As he goes to X now, there's less of the drive to need to get JSN to the outside or Cooper as much to the outside at times. Really does free some things up. Because now you can get JSN back to the slot. You can move Cooper over to the Z. Z is going to be a yard off the line of scrimmage, so you tend to get a little bit of an easier free release for him. And that'll benefit him as not being necessarily a pure outside guy in the way he runs at all times. It really settles everything down if Horton can kind of be that really solid X for you. Seahawks should be donated to the 12s. I wish that was the case, Jonas. I really do. I think that would be really cool if somehow we could kind of replicate a little bit of what the Packers have there. I doubt it'll ever kind of happen again, but it would be nice. Dig to Brandon. Oh, yes. More Martinez with the number 1 O-line would be a good thing. Sharp bubble wrap makes sense too, but I won't last to the Niners game waiting to see him on the field. You give him maybe a couple carries, even like the Packers game, but I am a little worried about the running back room a little bit with Walker down. You already lost McIntosh for the year. We've seen this running back room at times get thin really quick, and that's kind of just I'm a little bit just paranoid about that. But I'd like to make sure we got Sharps good to go. We at least got one of our prime horses good to go day one. Here we are, I think to Brandon, man, on the next roundtable show, you got to ask Jake to hook you up with the great Bellore taco experience in LA. Bellore tacos, said in my best Homer voice, Bellore tacos. We've got a couple around here. I've seen the name of it pop up, Addicted. I'll try to check one of them out if I see him out and about around the town here. But Jake's from New York, like HHG says. He's an LA fan in New York. Yeah, Austin, I see your Austin City later. I see some of your takes on this. We traded Russell Wilson for a haul, and the team we stuck Russell Wilson third with is way better than us. I don't think that that's the case. I think the Denver Broncos having one little bit better than average season last year doesn't mean now that the Broncos are somehow this enduring juggernaut that's been created that's just about to lay siege to the league. They had a successful year. Would they win one more game than us? I don't think that that makes them far and away way better as a team or way better position than we are. The other part of this, Austin, was that when you moved Russell Wilson, you were turning things over at that time and you were committing to a turning over the process. And nobody wants to use the word rebuild, but that's just what you were doing. You were eating out over the last couple of years a ton of dead money. You're getting bad contracts off the books. You're getting younger as a roster. And when you're going to commit to getting younger as a roster, that means you're going to go through your ebbs and flows and your bumpy roads to eventually become the team you want to get to. When you get the young roster up to a place where they're ready to now go and fly. But in that turning over and bringing so many young players that you're going to play so very young in their career, that meant that's what the way that was going to go. So the fact that it didn't instantaneously take off after you moved on from your franchise quarterback, the fact that you didn't instantaneously go win Super Bowls when you just moved on from the best quarterback in your history and you had to move on from the best coach in your history, I don't think that that's some great horrible misstep by the organization. I think that's a kind of an understandable part of this process when you make the changes that they made, when you come to the end of an era. That's what happened here, Austin, is we came to the end of the era, and now we're opening up a new one. And that's not going to be a seamless process where you go from one to the other and you're just going to be going from amazing and great to amazing and great. You're going to have to sometimes then take a couple of your lumps to kind of, get through there at that point. Garion says, taking serious med pains for your back is not a recipe for longevity. I don't know what the man's wife is telling him, but I would bet it's not. Let's effing go! You don't mess around with your backs. You don't. And you do wonder about that. Like you say, I can attest to this having family members that have gone through this. It's when it comes to back, doctors just tend to kind of shrug and start shooting syringes into the back. That's kind of just what they do. It still is one of those ones where like nobody seems to still have quite a great understanding or idea of how to get this stuff right. It's a hard thing to diagnose. It's a hard thing to fix. Thrill Out says, getting a shot in the back didn't work for Tyrod Taylor. See, it does start to feel a little Hail Mary-like, and Jake is super confident, folks. I'll tell you, we talked to him offline where I was like, you got this much confidence, huh? Epidermal in the back, still not practicing, supposed to practice today, still not out there today, still going to be sitting down. Like, that doesn't get you a little. He's like, nope, he's all good. I mean, he's completely, I know it's Jake, but he's unflummoxed in the least. Thrill House Bo Nix has a lot of miles and had broke back last season. Oh. And that's another part of Nick's having success like he did. The guy comes into the league having started like 5 years in college, a little bit of an older prospect. You do hope with him paired with a Peyton that you're able to get to his floor a little quicker than you could maybe with other quarterbacks. And I like what Nick's has done there. I love the pairing with him and Peyton. But I just don't quite buy in as much to the Bronco roster as some others are. And that this is the team that's going to come rise up and take the division this year, for instance. I could see him getting in the playoffs again, but I could see him getting in the playoffs with basically the same record they had last year and then not doing a lot once they get into the playoffs. BB Hawk says, I can't wait to hear Bronco fans when they see Spoon get receive national and be like, wait, we gave you him and Cross being a top 5 O lineman. Yeah, Broncos lost that trade. Yeah, if the Broncos don't make the trade, you're in a better position than you are right now. That's the part of this that's like, give me a break. If you hadn't made the trade, you had those picks, you had all that money, you would be a better team right now. So it costed you majorly. The fact you've been able to navigate it, then good for you, but it doesn't change those facts of it. What's up, King Bomber? How you doing, man? How's your day going? Hearing best LA tacos por favor. Hole in the wall place. Unbelievable. I'll try to check it out, man. I'm going to be driving up there so I can maybe kind of Google search it out in my car. HGB, who would you say is better right now, Sam or Russ? Sam Darnold. By a good amount. With Russ, there's a little bit of he's holding on to the starting experience, and it's a tenuous grip at that. I mean, it's all basically built for him on the back of Jackson Dart not being good enough to go this year. But when Russell's gone to a couple different other organizations, when he's gone to a couple of very smart offensive minds, and those offensive minds have said we can't do anything with this, I think it's pretty telling at that point. Thrill House, I can't believe that the Bills paid up James Cook either. You know, they're in the go for mode. They're trying to keep their window where it's at. They don't want to mess with that window. I guess I get that a little bit, but at the same point in time, I really don't believe in paying running backs. And I joked last night on the round table, and I do believe this, the second you pay Dalvin Cook, he's going to turn into a 1979 Pinto. And this is the way this works with these running backs is they already have a hard time staying upright before you pay him. Once you pay him, the returns are not all that better at that point. It tends to trend in one given direction, and it trends in that way almost to a pretty extreme fashion. Well, look at the Niners with McCaffrey. You know, literally those Achilles tears popped up, micro Achilles tears popped up the second that the contract ink was dry on the new extension. Thrill House, Hawksnest, I mean, I met the doctor punctured Tyrell's lungs and he lost the job. I was wondering what you'd think if Byron started at nose tackle first preseason series. The Chargers story where he got the lung punctured with the bad shot. That was just a weird situation. And tough for Tyrod Taylor because he was going to finally get a chance to start that year as they're going to kind of wait on Herbert to get him through on that. We did at the start of the show, Thrill House, I played a clip. Okay, kitty. I played a clip in regards to Byron Murphy talking and Mike Macdonald talking about it. He said he's going to keep him between the B gaps, which means you're not getting Byron Murphy on the outside. There is going to be some of Byron Murphy at nose tackle this year, Thrill House. It's going to happen. I would estimate that at least a third of his snaps will be from the nose tackle position. Will he get more snaps this year from 3 tech? I would think so. But the other part that you're not going to get around is that he's going to play some nose tackle. More snaps as a pass rusher, but still you're not getting him out of the nose tackle role, partly because you just haven't put enough there. Even if Jaron Reed played some of it there, you're still going to need some of him there because it's just such a lean position for you as it stands right now. So you're going to see a little bit of it. I don't know if the first preseason series, but I've made my peace with the fact you'll still get a little bit more than I'd like to see, where I'd love to see him more as just a pure 3 tech, but this is the problem, and this is the first world problem, Thrill House, of having 2 really dynamic 3 techs and only so many snaps to go around. And then having a need at nose tackle, you kind of get left here a little bit on that. Orthodox Russ, Jake sounding like the knight from Monty Python and the Holy Grail. It's just a scratch. Get back here. It's fine. I've got another arm yet. I've got you here. Don't you run for me, you coward. Coward. Great scene. Knight gets his legs and arms chopped off, and the Knight is just one at a time chopping the leg and the arm off and leaving the Knight. The Knight keeps talking trash to him as he walks away and says, you have been bested. I am now going to leave you. Leave me, coward. I'm still fighting you. It's like, you don't have any legs. I'll bite you. Just a flesh wound. It's great. Great movie. Brian says Barkley might be the unicorn here. Yeah, I mean, the Eagles, and part of what I always say with Roseman is I got a lot of appreciation for Roseman because he gets kind of, he gets the benefit of everybody being like, well, he just wins trades. That's all he does. He just wins trades. Roseman does a lot of other smart things too, beyond just winning trades, quote unquote. And the Barkley signing was a ballsy, and it was going against the grain a little bit. I think that he's also smart enough to understand what Barkley could do behind that Eagles offensive line, especially, and that you'd built up such a freaking powerhouse of a line that giving a talent like Barkley to that was going to be just jet fuel. But that is the outlier to me, Brian. And as I always say, I never want to chase outliers. I never want to chase the exceptions to the rules. If I land on one, if I happen to find an exception to the rule, if it happens to develop in my house, then great. That's a beautiful thing. But I don't want to be chasing those things. It's like chasing a lotto ticket. Only one winner in freaking 5 million or whatever. Right? There's an easier path to go find the success than chasing something like that. Kieran says, yeah, but the chances Saquon repeats his performance from last year? Probably not. But is it worth it for a Super Bowl title for the Eagles? Did he get at least that 1 year? Probably. I do think, like Jeffrey says, he's probably going to get hurt at this point. That's another part that we tend to know too, is that you get a guy with the usage that Barkley had, goes through the long NFL season, goes into the playoffs, all of those touches on that body for a guy that's already had some injury problems. The next year, you do tend to have to kind of pay that bill a little bit physically, which means you don't tend to be back to where you were the prior year. Derrick Henry's kind of been able to, again, been one of the outliers on this to kind of destroy that concept, but this is another one of those sort of hard and fast rules when it comes to running backs, that you have that kind of usage the prior year, you're leading the league in rushing, you get in the playoffs, you got a bunch of other games where you got a ton of touches. You're kind of needing that year to sort of catch your breath then. Phoebe says, okay, there were 2B because Josh Jacobs had a good season after getting paid, but I agree. Yeah, he's another one. It has worked out in that way, and we have seen a shift with running backs get paid. I mean, how many got paid last year from Tony Pollard, DeAndre Swift with the Bears? So we have seen a little bit of a change back to running backs, maybe getting a little bit more of that benefit, especially with the passing attack going backwards. And maybe this is a bit of the transition Phoebe is going into the future will be in the next couple of years, more of a drawn back to the running back talent being something that is actually more you can benefit from. That you don't have to get the line built first. You don't have to get the scheme built first. You don't have to have the great quarterback there first. You can have some of this other stuff on point before that. I will say, though, on two of these exceptions we're talking about, being or even a third, even out of the exception of a Derrick Henry, that any of these exceptions we're talking about all have a good offensive system in place, all have a good offensive line in place, all have a good quarterback to work around them within that, right? To take some of the pressure away, or at least a functionally decent enough quarterback to where you can't just put all of the concentration on the running back and take that part away. So it does seem like even if the rule's broken a little bit, there is some stuff, though, in addition to that where you go, yeah, but they've got this, that, and the other to make that thing work, to make the outlier situation be created. And if you're not creating those same kind of conditions, then you can't say, oh, we're going to do what they did. Wait, you didn't create the same conditions. You only took one of the parts of their conditions and said, we'll just get the great running back. It's like, wait, no, you need the other parts there too to make that go. But it is, I think, an ever kind of changing thing. NFL-wise on running backs and, the value of them and their impact and the analytics coming into it and whether or not a difference-making running back can actually kind of save you through a little bit at times, which I think it can. I do. All right. Well, we wrap it up on that note. We've got 2 hours in the books today. Tomorrow, we're coming back at you with the B&B show on Thursday. Then we've got the Friday football game. So we'll be cooking through on that side of it with a couple of stuff lined up here over the next couple of days. I think, guys, all of the donations, and I just missed one here. Let me get the last dono here with Jeffrey. Thank you for the $2 donation, Jeffrey. Just one thing to say. Just one thing. Oots, 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 oots. I haven't had to say, I'm getting that thing done by the next show, Jeffrey. By tomorrow's show, I got to get it done. Not by tomorrow's show, by the preseason game. I need to get my Oots track laid with my house music so that I can have that on my button every time we want to bring up Oots, man. That is going to be one of the things by game one of the season I got in place. You better believe it, man. But Oots, man, what a player. What a hell of a find for the Seahawks. Going back, not just finding a fullback to bring back the team for the first time, but seemingly finding one hell of a fullback who's really going to bring an immeasurable point of impact to this team, especially as a blocker, especially with what he does, meeting linebackers in the hole. He's going to bust out a lot of runs on the back of him just kind of clearing that final defender for that running back and go find some daylight. But thank you, Jeffrey. I appreciate all of your donations and support today. Feed me, you as well. Taker 610, Robbie Red, Randall McDaniel, Kyle from South Park, CD Woods, William Tarkowski. You guys are awesome. Beyond Balance, Polly. I really, really, really appreciate all of you guys on that side of it again, too. If you can for me, guys, hit that like button. Maybe sub on up if you get the chance. I would really, really, really appreciate it. Addicted, I was dealing with medical insurance. Oh, good luck on that, Addicted. I know how that goes. Yeah, you got to get the mob to get them to pay. Tyron Taylor's been 3 for 3 on preseason injuries to become stars. Allen with the Bills, Jackson with the Ravens, Herbert with the Chargers. Could be 4 for 4 with a random quarterback. Laugh my ass off. Hey, you'd think that some general manager would realize that at some point, King, and try to benefit on the back of that, like there's some weird kind of psychic thing going on with Tyrod, that kind of causes his conditions. That's interesting. Allen with the Bills, Jackson with the Raiders, and Herbert with the Chargers. Tough on him, man. That guy's the guy that I can always liked his talent a little bit. I thought he had a pretty lively arm, good mobility. He's a little undersized, but never really given that chance. He's going to get that year at the Chargers, and then that lung injury happened, and it kind of cut him off. So you do feel a little bit bad for him on that too with it. He seems like a guy that seems like a good guy. Gary and I may procrastinate more and build that Oots house track. I gotta get it put together, man. I got a totally good idea for this that I think is gonna be hilarious for game day. And it'll be our equivalent, like when you got the Cowboys back in the day where they'd be like, Moose. And then maybe we can start a thing in the stadium where everybody starts going, Oots, 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 Oots. Can you imagine a stadium full of 65,000 people all doing that at once? That'd go hard. Emmanuel says, bring Tyrod to Seattle and then help make Milrow 4 for 4. Yeah, we'll just move on from Drew and bring in Tyrod. We got to just explain to Drew Emmanuel and be like, look, Drew, he's a rabbit's foot, man. He's Tyrod the rabbit's foot Taylor. You're not a rabbit's foot, Drew. You know what I mean? Look what you did to Daniel Jones. 206 David, be your a legend. Thank you, David. I appreciate you. King Bomber's with me, man. He says, sign Tyrod. I'm saying, if there's somebody with a rabbit's foot up their butt in this league, I'm taking advantage of that. Got a rabbit's foot up his butt. He's carrying a leprechaun. Come on. Doesn't save him for injuries, but helps get you your franchise quarterback of the future. They sound like the dog pound. I like that. Only Uncle Rico can save the Rams at this point. They lost their chance, man. They had their opportunity. And instead they chose Garoppolo. Well, good luck to that, Rams. Good luck to you on that. All right, we'll be back in less than 24 hours with the B&B show. Me and Brendan are going to do a little bit of a game preview here for this upcoming Chiefs matchup, what we want to see, what we're going to be looking for, which rookies we're going to be concentrating on, just the overall development that we're hoping continues to come forward with this football team. So please do join me tomorrow at 12 o'clock. Really looking forward to that show. And then I will be doing the play-by-play, 7 p.m. Friday night, where you want to watch the Seahawks right here, because I will be doing the play-by-play throughout all of the course of the game, end to end on that. We'll be doing post-game discussion as well. So please do join me over there. I thank you for all of the new subscribers. Thank you for all of the donations and support. Thank you for all the members and the patrons on this channel that make this channel go. And hey, we even got some sponsorship coming down the line here at the Hawks Nest. So we just keep growing. We just keep expanding. And I really appreciate you guys riding and rocking with me here for this upcoming NFL season, which I think is going to be a fun NFL season at that. So back in less than 24 hours. But until that time, I shouldn't have to remind you. I shouldn't have to let you know with the team this close, this very close to doing great things. But I'm going to do so anyway. I'm still going to do it. I'm still going to let you know. Don't you ever forget. Don't you do it. Not with this year that's coming on deck. Go Hawks.